In a world crawling with spirits, there's one kid who can actually talk to them. With his insane skills, he joined a 5-man hero squad and they totally crushed the Demon King. A kid with a power this insane is actually called the Universe. From way up high, you get an insane view of the Kingdom of Fools and the massive, epic castle in the center that shows everyone just how powerful this place is. The dark-haired guy was totally shocked, waving his arms around and demanding to know why his co-workers were acting so weird all of a sudden. The legendary hero who just crushed the Demon King gave him a death stare, while his whole squad stood right behind him after they all played a huge part in that insane fight. This scary guy in heavy armor told everyone straight up that he wasn't their friend and was only there to manage the magic gear. The blonde girl fixing her lipstick totally agreed, saying the guy was a total loner who never talked to anyone and just stayed by himself during the whole hike. Another teammate jumped in to give her 2 cents, claiming her special powers make the universe look down on everyone with a stare that's way scarier than any knight's. Trapped in a super cringe moment, the guy started stuttering and tried to explain that he's a total mess at talking to people, but he's really pushing himself to do his job right. The hero just smirked and said he had no clue what they were even talking about, looking down at the kid with total coldness as it became super obvious he didn't feel sorry for. The whole world went silent as his own team started trashing him, and even though it was painful to hear, they wouldn't stop asking why he even thought he was useful since he hadn't done anything special yet. The kid was totally lost and asked about his magic spirit horse, but the hero just rolled his eyes with a look that meant he was definitely up to no good. The light-haired guy marched right up to the horse with a smirk, threw his arms out wide, and told everyone that with a partner like this, the job would be a total breeze. He marched up to the magic horse and blasted it with a massive kick, calling it a total piece of junk, and honestly, the universe was shook that a teammate could be this savage. The kid bolted straight for his insane invention and screamed its name, "Trans!" He steps up to the world's savior and asks him to stop all the trash talk, sounding a bit shaky but totally pumped up. He didn't even realize he'd grabbed the arm of this girl dressed like a nun, but she glared at his hand with total disgust. Then, without wasting a second, she swings and hits him right between the legs, and the pain is absolutely brutal. The guy's legs buckled and he crashed to his knees, totally paralyzed by the non-stop pain shooting through his body, while the girl just looked down and spat out a nasty insult. She already warned him to keep his hands off, and since she absolutely hates being touched by people she can't stand, you could see the pure disgust written all over her face. Stuck on the ground, the kid reached for the horse at the savior's feet and asked if being in a total trance was actually normal. The hero just gave a casual smile and said the universe has its own business to handle instead of their team. But the blonde guy thought that was totally gross and wrong. Suddenly, his face totally shifts as a wild idea hits him, and he looks up to tell the kid not to worry because they're gonna fix him just like they did to this poor guy. Universe finally woke up late that night, looking totally wrecked while lying on a massive pile of trash, buckets, and random junk. The moment he opens his eyes, he sees massive, dark storm clouds taking over the sky, making it feel like even the weather is out to get him today. The kid covered his face as he started to transform out of pure rage, looking like he was about to burst into tears while thinking about how every hero in the squad had their own special role to play. Our hero has to step up as the new king to prove he's loyal to the princess, while the warrior leads the whole army, the priestess becomes a legendary saint, and the young mage levels up into a world-class sage. Even the universe was totally clueless about this, and after a while, he landed a job researching and fixing up magical gear. The kid was grinding his magic skills, surrounded by a mountain of books, strange tools, and bubbling potions where every single thing had a special purpose. The kid gave the transformer a high five and shouted that he finally fixed it, meaning it was about to run like new, while everyone nearby just stared at him like he was speaking a different language. The kid was walking down the hallway all by himself. He was totally zoned out, not even noticing the crowd around him. He clutched a folder of papers like it was some top. He's walking down the hallway when something on the wall catches his eye, making him stop right there to get a better look. There's a bulletin board on the wall that looks totally normal, but right in the middle is a huge poster of that white-haired hero who just clowned on the entire world. He looked at the poster and smiled like everything was totally fine, but then he remembered Typhon and went to check on her, only to find out she was actually getting married. He figured he'd go see that girl if he got a break, But as he kept moving, a coworker stopped him and said the Lord himself was looking for him. The second he steps into the office, the boss doesn't even stop reading. He just gives him a quick look and fires him on the spot without even putting the paper down. The kid froze like the ground just swallowed his legs, totally stunned because he never expected things to go down like this. Universe asked why Got Swan was acting so weird, so the boss just leaned back in his chair and said he can't stand the guy because he literally talks to the machines while he's fixing them. He tried to explain the whole situation, but he was so nervous that he just started stuttering about the spirit living inside that magic device. Hutzvan cut him off mid-sentence, snapping at him to speak up since the boss was totally over his mumbling, and his co-workers were already whining about how rude the world had become. This guy was clearly over the conversation, but the other dude kept yapping because he was desperate to save his job. Gatsuan wouldn't give the kid a second of peace and kept getting in his face, bragging that he was going to scrub the universe's name off his inventions and slap his own name on them instead. Every single client loved the worlds and gear he built, so his hard work earned the product a massive top-tier rating. The guy winced, bragged about becoming a big-shot official, and gave a totally fake apology while thanking them for all their hard work. The sun was out and kids were having a blast in the streets while the adults stayed busy, but Universe wasn't feeling the vibe at all and just moped along. He let out a massive sigh as the stress finally faded, and he started thinking about where he could find a chill new job that actually fit his vibe. Suddenly, he hears two girls rushing past, gossiping that the Wind Spirit Princess is finally marrying the hero who took down the Demon King today. He suddenly remembered what he was thinking back in the hallway and realized he'd totally forgotten he was supposed to be at Typhon's wedding. The sun was shining as a massive crowd gathered outside to watch the hero finally marry the princess, who's actually the spirit of the wind. The hilltop square was pretty much empty except for the VIPs, and right in the middle sat an arch and a bell, but the wind spirit looked super confused like something was really bothering her. The whole world went dark and everyone just froze to stare at the bride, because honestly, Typhon looked absolutely insane in that outfit. The boy grinned while watching the awesome ceremony, truly wishing from the bottom of his heart that the princess would finally be happy. A girl from the hero's squad wearing a headscarf shouted out that today was the big wedding between the Wind Spirit Princess and the hero who saved the world. The universe was doing everything to stay positive and not freak out, but you could tell his anxiety was still totally eating at him. These spirits are super chill and love helping people out, so swearing loyalty to a human is basically the ultimate honor for them. He was dead set on the idea that you never act like you're better than the spirits, especially when they've already sworn to be loyal to you. The princess was getting super upset and didn't even care who saw, just staring at the floor and refusing to even look at her fiancé. Everyone noticed Typhon was acting super nervous, but they just thought it was because her husband was about to become a national hero, until something weird caught her eye and she whipped around to face the crowd. She gave the guests a huge smile and a wave, making the whole room feel super welcome. But honestly, it looked like she cared way more about these people than the guy she was actually supposed to marry. Suddenly she just freezes in shock, her whole face changing as she sees something so wild it makes her completely forget why she was even sad. Universe gave the princess a super awkward look, and he could have sworn they actually locked eyes for a second. This wind monster crept to the edge and squinted at the crowd, thinking its eyes were totally playing tricks on it. He looked around super carefully, trying to see exactly what she was staring at. As soon as he caught her looking right at him, his heart totally melted, and even though he was super shy, he couldn't help but grin and give her a little wave. A massive blast of wind suddenly slams into the square, knocking everyone down and even flipping the hero into the air as something super fast blurs past, wrecking everything in its path. It was the princess herself, and she was sprinting so fast she was basically flying, totally ignoring everything in her way. While the crowd stood there totally confused, the wind princess suddenly came charging straight for him, and not even his cloak could keep him hidden anymore. Tears were streaming down her face, but the second they hit her chin, a huge gust of wind just snatched them away. With her face turning a light shade of pink, she was finally just a step away from reaching her dream. The kid had no clue what was going on, but he threw his arms out to catch the princess who was already right in front of him. She lunged into his arms with so much energy that he almost wiped out trying to stay on his feet. The typhoon spun around like crazy, knocking people flat with massive gusts that showed everyone just how scary nature's power can be. She stopped and sobbed, asking if it was really him and how he was even alive, while the guy just stared back totally confused about where she got that idea. The wind spirit revealed that the hero told her the entire universe just vanished during the journey, while the princess's fiancé was left lying in the middle of the square, totally losing it over everything that just happened. Typhon broke down in tears, crying out that if the universe is actually alive, then getting married is totally pointless, and she was so overwhelmed that even the wind started blowing like crazy as if it... The guy noticed it too when a massive blast of wind started blowing away everything in sight, from the bushes to the actual guards. While everyone else was just standing there totally confused, the princess grabbed the universe's hand and told him none of this stuff really mattered anyway. She grabbed his hands and looked him in the eyes with hope, asking if he'd run away with her to leave everything behind and start a brand new life of freedom. The wind spirit didn't even wait for an answer. She just grabbed the guy and yanked him out of the way because the guards were already charging right at them. Typhon suddenly scooped Universe up and bolted from the wedding, leaving him totally stunned and clinging to her shoulders as he tried to figure out what was going on. He's still looking totally lost while the guests and the savior of the world just sit on the floor, trying to wrap their heads around what just went down. Our hero stared at his fiancée while petals swirled all around them, but suddenly, he just completely snapped. His eyes popped wide open and turned totally bloodshot as he grit his teeth, looking like he was so full of rage and sadness that he just started screaming insults at the entire world. He waves his hand at the crowd and orders them to grab the boldest girl in the universe, leaving the spirits totally shocked that he'd be so disrespectful. One spirit finally snapped and let out a massive scream, yelling the hero's name over and over as he tried to run away. Breben looked around totally lost, having no clue what he was supposed to do, but the spirit said it couldn't just ignore what he mentioned about his fiancée. Universe and Typhon sprinted into the city only to be blocked by Braben's wedding carriage, and the boy stopped dead in his tracks to stare at the sign on the roof. When they got close to the machine Typhon found, the universe realized the horse pulling the cart was actually its own creation, the boy's friend, Trans. As Typhon hopped into the carriage, Universe gave the horse a friendly pat, making her ask in total shock how he already knew this animal, or if they'd met before. The guy nods and explains that this was the very first magic tool he ever built himself. It turns out this thing was with the hero's party from the very start, until they finally beat the demon. Carved right onto that magic horse was a message saying it was built by Gatsun, the guy who used to rule the entire universe. The guy was actually getting heated, which is crazy since this was his own plan, but he still looked totally miserable. The girl yanked him away from the horse and told him to hurry up and get on already. The boys scrambled into the cart and sped away, trying to get as far from that nightmare as possible. Even though this horse was actually magical, it acted totally normal, trotting along with quiet hoofbeats just like any other basic horse. The universe was left wondering why the horse was so quiet, thinking maybe its voice box was just switched off, while the boy promised his friend he'd definitely fix it and wipe away that gross writing. Knights on horseback were already charging full speed, right on the heels of the carriage carrying the princess and Universe. As the guards started swarming the carriage, Typhon tried to warn the boy, but the kid could already see that things were about to get ugly. She was totally heartbroken and couldn't hide it, crying out that at this rate, they'd catch up to the rest of the group in no time. The kid was totally stumped because none of this made any sense. I mean, the trans was built using the absolute best parts in the entire universe. It should have been way faster than... He suddenly realizes the trance uses earth spirits, but since Typhon is a wind spirit, the power is totally weakened because wind and earth are complete opposites. She told the universe she got the message, but she couldn't waste a single second because a guard on a horse-thrown chariot was already closing in on the princess. Typhon catches on and unleashes a massive windstorm that turns into a giant vortex, and it looks like the guard is totally toast with nowhere to run. His cart flipped over as he let out a huge yell, but the girl quickly tossed the reins to the boy, who caught them like a total pro. Most people would have unhooked the horse from the cart first, but this kid didn't even bother and just leaped straight onto its back. The universe leaned against the horse, gave it props for a job well done, and then asked the earth spirits inside to step up and help him out. Suddenly, weird voices started echoing from right inside the horse, and it turns out they were earth spirits who recognized a familiar voice, and finally decided to answer back. These little gnome-looking dudes came sprinting out, totally hyped to see their old friend again. They hopped onto the horse like it was nothing, but they still whined to everyone about being exhausted because this wannabe hero keeps making them do paperwork. The moment these earth spirits met their master, they got totally fired up and vanished in a flash to show him what they could really do. Out of nowhere, the horse hits a crazy new speed like it's a totally different beast, and the cart kicks up a massive dust cloud while smashing through everything in its way. Typhon gripped his chair, hyped out of his mind and yelling to the entire universe about how insanely fast they were moving. Out of nowhere, a bunch of guards jump out to block the road, but the magic horse doesn't even flinch and charges straight through them. He smacked the soldiers, horses, and carts so hard they went flying into the air before slamming back down with a massive boom. The power was so crazy it sent Typhon's cart flying, and even Universe, who was just sitting on his horse, got lifted straight into the air. They slammed back onto the ground and kept zooming forward while the princess and the boy held on for dear life to anything they could grab. Typhoon was totally losing it with excitement, waving her arms and yelling for the horse to go even faster because she was having the best time ever. She accidentally bumped a button without even realizing it, and suddenly the wedding sign for the princess and Ray-Ban shot way up while the pipe behind her exploded and sent stuff flying everywhere. Stunning flower petals started drifting down on Typhon in the middle of space, making everything look like a dream, and everyone just had to look up and stare at the incredible view. But wait, it gets even crazier. These flashy gadgets on ribbons dropped from the carriage and let out a super loud, beautiful melody the moment they hit the ground. Outside, things looked totally wild as Typhon, the wind spirit, took the driver's seat of the wedding carriage while the universe itself rode a horse, and the flower-covered carriage blasted forward to the sound of music. The pastors across the street were totally blown away by the crazy scene, and even the guys who weren't paying attention had to turn around once that melody hit their ears. Everyone stayed back, too scared to get close, just whispering about what they were seeing. They realized right away this was the wedding carriage for the hero and the spirit princess. But what really blew the pair zoomed right over the crowded street, making everyone stop and stare at the crazy sight. But Typhon didn't care at all. She was grinning like a little kid and thought the whole mess was hilarious. People were so curious they actually got hurt by accident, because the carriage was zooming so fast that the wind blast literally knocked them off their feet. iPhone was absolutely beaming with joy, lighting up everything around her with pure good vibes, while the universe just gave a tiny smile because it was happy to see her so stoked. Out of nowhere, the earth spirits started changing the writing on the fancy carved wedding plaque, and the entire universe was totally shocked watching them work. The earth spirits were hyped about what they built and showed it off to the universe, and right then, a sign appeared calling it the Chariot of Love for the universe and all its friends. This totally epic spirit stands tall in front of Brabin and demands to know why he said those messed up things earlier. He actually repeated the hero's insults to the princess, sounding totally shocked like he had to double-check if he even heard that right. He totally went off on Brabin, warning him to never disrespect the wind spirit princess like that, because even a legendary hero isn't allowed to cross that line. The hero scowled and clicked his tongue, clearly hating every second of this. He couldn't stand being talked down to and thought this whole situation was just wrong. To him, he spun around at the exit and told them to forget all that. They needed to catch this monster fast and take over the entire universe. The wind spirit wasn't chilling out at all, asking one more time who he should hunt down if not the universe, and you could tell Bribin was getting totally fed up because this kid just wouldn't quit. He then asked if the hero didn't say the universe was already dead, making the guy freeze and listen without even turning back to the spirit. He turned around and started straight up mocking the spirit, rolling his eyes and mumbling, but the boy didn't even care because he was already sprinting toward the other spirits, shouting about how Breben stood there acting all smug, asking why everyone's so obsessed with non-humans when he thinks those universals are the absolute worst people with a name that makes him sick. The spirits all whipped around to face Breben at the exact same time, looking totally shocked and so incredibly angry that it was actually terrifying. They rushed the hero, demanding to know who he thought was gross and how he dared to trash-talk their friend, while the guy just stood there totally stunned, waving his hands and trying to explain himself. The wind spirit was absolutely fuming and screamed that Typhon only married Breben because it felt like destiny, and to honor the fallen soldiers, but now they realized they'd been played this entire time. He promised they'd dig up the truth, and now the hero's reputation is completely ruined forever. Breben was absolutely fuming, wondering why they were even obsessed with this specific universe anyway. The spirits took off from the square, warning that if the universe is actually alive, the hero better get ready for the absolute worst, leaving Breben standing there totally stunned and all alone. Typhon and his partner finally ditched the guys chasing them by ducking into the forest, and while he was gasping for air, she just hopped out of the carriage like it was no big deal. The earth spirits were crying happy tears because their master was finally back, even though everyone, including them, totally thought he was dead. The universe reached out to give a spirit a little head pat to say thanks, and Typhon was so moved that he just stood there with a big smile. The girl watched him closely as he petted those earth spirits, and you could tell she wanted that same attention for herself, but she was way too shy to ask. He saw the look in her eyes, gave her a head pat, and thanked the wind spirit, making the princess so happy her unique ears started twitching with joy. The whole world was rooting for her, but then it basically asked if she was really sure about ditching her own wedding. She pouted and looked away, telling him her mind was totally made up. But she didn't just run off with some guy. She literally escaped with the entire universe, and he had no... The princess looked down with a huge blush and started tripping over her words, but she finally found the guts to tell the universe she loved him. It's like he didn't even realize what she just said, because he just smiled and told her he loved her too, making her turn bright red and scream at the top of her lungs. The earth spirits just stared at the kid, totally lost, like they were waiting for him to finally speak up. Right then, the whole universe got the hint and poured out its love for them. She turned bright red and called the whole world stupid since she couldn't hide her feelings anymore, and she actually tried to punch him while he just threw his hands up in total panic. But then, totally out of nowhere, she grabs him by the collar and leans right in. Tears welled up in her eyes as she finally admitted she was just so happy the universe was still alive. This sweet guy let the beautiful princess lean right against him, and feeling her total trust, he thanked her one more time. Once Typhon finally chilled out and sat on a stump, Universe asked what the plan was. But since she was totally lost too, she just asked him what he wanted to do. He told them he needed to pull himself together first because he was feeling totally wrecked. Universe felt the carving on the horse and realized only the water spirits in Confronting could erase it, since it would take a water spirit just as strong as the fire spirits who made it to break the seal. Typhoon was super hyped and agreed to go with him, and even though he asked if she really wanted to leave home, she confidently told him that since wind spirits are everywhere, her kingdom would track her down in no time anyway. She carefully walked up and asked him one more time if she could go with him, and he told her there was no way he could ever say no to her. The princess threw her fist up, totally hyped, and shouted that it's finally happening. They're heading straight to the land of water spirits to claim their victory. This kid in gloves is digging through a pile of papers when he finds something he hates, and he gets so mad he crushes the page like it's the one causing all his problems. Brainban was losing it, laughing like a creep and trying to chill out by ranting about how he'd rule the whole universe and make everyone bow down. Maybe that total embarrassment finally broke him, or maybe he was just born this crazy. Typhon leaned in with a massive, friendly smile, thanking the earth spirits and telling them she was honestly so hyped to finally meet them. The earth spirits were totally caught off guard by the wind princess's sudden message, and even though they were shaking with fear, they still managed to squeak out a hello. The universe calmed the guys down and told Typhon that if the girl leaves with him, she's got to learn to get along with every spirit out there, no matter what element they use. He pointed ahead and dropped some sketchy conditions, but she agreed instantly and told him it was time to get moving. But the universe told her to slow down, and she just stared at him, totally confused about what was stopping them this time. The guy tells Typhon he's got to change clothes ASAP because that wedding dress is making him stand out way too much. She was totally down and sprinted to the carriage to change, way too hyped to waste even a second before heading out. The guy was totally stunned by all the noise she was making while changing, sounding like she was about to smash the whole carriage to pieces. Universe X was just finishing his hellos and figuring out his next move for the trip, when Typhon suddenly started yelling his name at the top of his lungs. The princess had already changed and was flexing her new fit for everyone, winking at the guy with a huge grin because she knew he'd love it. First off, the universe spotted that magic bracelet on the princess's wrist and asked if she was really still wearing the same one he'd seen before. Typhoon looked down at her bracelet and said she'd never take it off since the universe literally gave it to her. And while the boy gave her a big smile, she looked totally stressed out like she was about to drop some bad news. She clasped her hands and asked him one more time how she looked, just dying to hear a compliment from the guy who meant the world to her. He finally noticed how amazing the princess looked in that outfit, and his compliment made her light up with a huge, genuine smile. She admits she's super nervous since she's never worn an outfit like this before, but his words totally calm her down, and you can see the relief on her face as he confirms it's his first time seeing her look like this too. The princess looked away all shy and told him she wanted him to see every side of her on this journey. Suddenly, she waves her hand in his face and points to the carriage, asking if he wants to change outfits since there's a ton of gear left inside, and he actually stops to think about. The couple hopped inside and realized this was no normal carriage because it was actually a massive magic-filled hall on the inside. He looked around in total shock and realized this wasn't just a room, it was a straight-up palace. Seriously, why does he need this much space? Is he planning a honeymoon with... She swings the door open to a massive bedroom, gets her head in the game, and marches straight to the wardrobe, only to find it's totally overflowing with all kinds of stuff. The closet was packed with super expensive high-end gear that looked like it cost a total fortune. This wind spirit was super hyped and asked the boy how he liked the fit, but he totally hated it and just told the creature to knock it off. The couple headed outside and saw the carriage was great on the inside, but the outside was a total mess that needed a serious cover-up, leaving them wondering where they'd even find the stuff to fix it. The universe saw they were surrounded by trees, and Typhon promised everyone that the forest spirits would definitely hook them up with some gifts. The princess pounded her chest to show she was totally fearless and kept demanding it since the wind and forest spirits are actually super close. She grabbed the heavy axe and rushed toward the forest, totally determined to get some help from those massive trees. But things went totally south, and after a quick talk with the forest spirits, Typhon grabbed the axe and slowly headed toward the universe, looking completely crushed as she hung her head in defeat. Typhon walks up to the boy and tells him to drop the plan because it'll hurt the spirits, leaving the girl totally crushed. The universe followed the girl into the trees, figuring it should try to make a deal because it might just get lucky. The guy stops at the nearest tree and checks it out real close while a light breeze rustles the leaves around him. He flashed a smile and looked way up at the giant tree, greeting the forest spirits and hoping they'd actually give him their blessing. Spirits started whispering from inside the tree like the Lord of the Universe was right there, and when the boy asked how they knew him, they said every single tree in the land knows exactly who he is. A forest spirit popped up on a tree and explained that all these plants are actually linked by their roots to swap secrets. The universe confidently made its request, feeling a bit awkward as it explained it needed to chop wood without accidentally making the spirits super angry. The forest spirit happily stretched its branch arms out, totally shocked that the world is actually like they say, since most people just barge in and chop down trees without even asking. He realized that maybe normal people just can't see these spirits, and that Typhon isn't actually anything special to the rest of the world. The forest spirit says he's ready to speak for every tree that's been turned into wood, explaining that since they're so tough and durable, they're actually stoked to be used, and that axe is so sharp and perfectly balanced that it slices through solid wood like it's nothing but paper. The boys set the log on the stump and got to work, Universe holding it steady while Typhon took aim and swung the axe with all his might. Next, the boys teamed up with the earth spirits to fix the carriage, nailing those new boards right onto the base. Once the job was finally done, everyone was hyped and throwing high fives, feeling super proud of what they'd pulled off. The whole universe basically said what everyone was thinking, that this work was straight up amazing. She leaped up and pumped her fist, looking more hyped than any other spirit or even the entire universe combined. The kid spotted some chains hooked to a post in the corner of the carriage and asked Typhon what they were for, totally caught off guard. She looked up, and you could tell by her face that she was totally grossed out and hated every second of this. She told her friend that whenever a servant spirit messes up, they get slapped into these chains to make them feel guilty, and Breben thought that sounded totally awesome. The guy got super serious and said it's totally messed up for a hero to even think like that, while Typhon hung on every word he said. She flashed a huge grin like she'd finally heard exactly what she wanted. But Universe was totally clueless about why she was laughing and started wondering if he'd said something wrong. The princess explains that people here treat spirits like total garbage, but she's just happy things are different in the universe as she gives him a warm smile. He tells them straight up that every single life is precious, no matter what class they belong to. She said he even treated the forest spirits with respect, and it's clear she totally looked up to him and felt so lucky to have such a kind guy in her life. The wind spirit flashed the universe her brightest smile, thanking it for every single person she met on her journey. Her words really hit him deep, and when she flashed that smile, he got all flustered and looked away. He shyly looked away and told her it was time to head out, and she just beamed at him, totally hyped to lead the way. If this magic horse was actually healthy, they'd finish the trip in less than a day. But since it's all worn out from being trapped away, the guys are stuck traveling for at least 3 days. The guy warned it'd take at least 3 days if everything went perfect. But right then, a dude in full armor was already standing by the carriage. These were the knights Breben sent to hunt down the bride and her old friend, and they immediately told their bosses exactly where the carriage was heading. Typhon realized something was totally wrong and told Universe, but the guy caught on to the vibe too. Just as they almost reached the border, the kingdom's knights swarmed the crew to stop them from crossing over. Typhoon and Universe realized they couldn't run or hide anymore, so their only choice was to smash right through the enemy. Universe turned to his horse and asked his ride for some serious backup. He called out to the earth spirits for backup, and they were so hyped to help that they jumped for joy, making the carriage blast off as the boys zoomed ahead. The sun was dropping behind them, and those long nights stuck in the carriages were coming faster and faster. With the guards just a few steps away from the carriage, Typhon and Universe leaned forward and braced themselves for the massive impact. They smashed right through the barrier, and the second they were clear, the princess hopped onto the roof and blasted some wind to give them a huge speed boost. She plopped into her seat, thanked the Universe, and hyped up Trans to go even faster, but he suddenly spotted something way ahead and locked in. Right at the border, a massive wall suddenly blocked the exit and blended right into the rocky hills like it was always there. This wasn't just a wall, it was a bunch of sharp spears tied together, perfectly placed to wreck any horse that tried to smash through it. Typhoon was totally shaking as she dropped the bad news that their trance power wasn't going to help them anymore. That's when the boy gets a genius idea and asks the wind spirit to use its power to fix the whole mess. He screamed at the top of his lungs just to be heard over the rushing wind, telling everyone they should use a massive gust to launch the whole crew into the sky. She whispered in total shock, sounding super confused as she said there was no way she could pull it off. But the Universe wasn't backing down and kept pushing the girl to just give it a shot, telling her it was really counting on her. She blushed a bit at the Universe's sweet words and promised to help him out since he just wouldn't stop asking. She cupped her hands and screamed at the top of her lungs, calling out to the wind spirits for some serious backup. Hearing her shaky voice, these tiny lights swarm in from all sides like magnets, lighting up the whole place in a massive flash. The princess slowly reached out her hands, finally ready to let the spirits help her on this insane journey. Typhon glared at the Universe looking super annoyed, like she was literally about to start crying over all this chaos. She totally lost her cool and shouted that there was no way she could handle such a massive mission with so little help. But there was no way he was quitting, so he decided to round up every single wind spirit to turn things around. Then he suddenly held up his finger like he just remembered something huge. He told the wind spirits that if they wanted to have some fun, they should just land right on his finger. He's using a pro spirit tamer trick that lets him summon them instantly just by... He let out a desperate scream for help that echoed through the whole place. That message from space was so loud it blasted across the whole area, and the spirits caught on instantly. Everyone was dead silent and waiting for a sign. But then one spirit couldn't take the suspense anymore and asked if the Universe was finally calling their names. Suddenly, hundreds of spirits swarmed together, all asking the same thing. Did the Universe actually call for them? Typhon and her friend looked up in total shock as those tiny lights started floating right toward him the moment he called out. Suddenly, wind spirits swirled around his finger and the shocked princess, and even the boy was blown away by how many showed up. But he quickly snapped back to reality and told Typhon to keep it moving. She was super annoyed and puffed out her cheeks in a pout, but she finally gave in and agreed to the deal. She turned to the spirits surrounding them and begged them to help lift the cart because they were in a total pinch. Invisible wind spirits shot out in every direction, swirling around the carriage and wrapping it in a mysterious glowing cloud. The magical breeze filled the air with a crazy sense of freedom and made everything look awesome. The guys were super hyped and already getting everything ready for the flight. Suddenly, the carriage wheels just lift right off the ground, all thanks to the crazy spirits that live in this world. Just like that, the whole carriage floats straight into the air, clearing every path so they can finally escape the kingdom. The soldiers chasing them looked up in total shock as the carriage suddenly soared way above their heads. As the boys soared over the barrier, the guards started screaming in total shock because they'd never seen a car actually fly before. Typhon was chilling and checking out the epic view, while Universe was just super relieved they finally lost the guys on their tail. Right then, the kid stops dead in his tracks because something weird flashes by and gives him a total bad vibe, making him wonder if this is all just a coincidence. The Universe definitely noticed what was happening, and Typhon reached out to gently cover her hand with his. The guy was totally clueless about why the princess was acting so weird, so he just asked her, making her turn bright red and struggle to find the right words. She actually came up with a genius plan because Typhon warned her it was dangerous, and since she didn't want the whole universe to end, she told him, even if she got all shy. He flashed her a grin and said he was super thankful, then he lifted her hand up while still holding it tight. Typhona was totally losing it with joy, looking just like a kid who finally got the toy they wanted as her whole face lit up with a massive grin. Universe looked ahead all proud while Typhon just smiled and enjoyed the moment. But she wasn't even worried about flying anymore. She was just blushing because Universe was holding her hand, and even ahead of the runaways was nothing but total freedom. And as their carriage soared through the clouds like a magic ship, they finally left that nightmare kingdom and all its drama in the dust. But right at that second, something massive was going down at the royal palace that would change the whole kingdom's future forever. Inside a crazy, expensive hall, things were getting intense as everyone gathered for a massive meeting about Typhon being kidnapped. The future king gritted his teeth and demanded to know why nobody had found the bride or the kidnapper yet. The Minister of Magic told everyone to relax because his soldiers were already at the border with high-tech gear he built himself. So now they just had to wait. Braden finally caught his breath, but he still looked super stressed and totally ticked off. A soldier suddenly bursts in with crazy news. Typhon and Universe's carriage just smashed through the border and they're already way past the kingdom. Hatzvan flew out of his chair in total shock, getting so worked up over the news that he slammed his hand right onto the table. He asked how that was even possible, and the knight awkwardly admitted they just flew through the sky, totally skipping the soldiers and all their new gear. The Minister of Magic wasn't buying any of it, calling it total nonsense since carriages obviously can't fly. And he even asked if the knight was under some weird spell to make him talk crazy, but the knight shut him down and said no way. The future king slammed his fist on the table and yelled, "He just doesn't get it!" Reiben realized instantly that Typhon used the wind to launch their carriage way up into the sky. Gatswan quickly covered his mouth and just nodded along, even though he was totally lost and didn't understand a single thing. He put his hand over his heart and reminded everyone that the minister himself created the magic horse. Then Braben called Hatsuana a total idiot for letting them escape and asked what his next move was. After a super awkward silence, the minister admitted he wasn't being deep and just wanted to show off that awesome horse, leaving Brabant looking totally lost. He just laughed it off, saying he's actually having a blast with this whole zombie hunting mission. Haquan's big idea is to put their faces on postcards everywhere so the whole world starts hunting for the head of the universe, dead or alive, while Brabanda just sits back. The future king slammed the table again, scaring the life out of Gotson, who was already sure he was about to get in huge trouble for his failed plan. Breben hyped up the minister and with a huge grin told him his plan was absolutely genius. Gatswan finally let out a huge sigh of relief because he was low-key freaking out about whether Brabant would actually back him up. They were already putting out the search alerts, and Braben felt like a total joke after Princess Typhon literally ran off with the entire universe. He crossed his arms, feeling totally sure this would be over in a flash, and a smug grin crept onto his face because he was so hyped about his own work. The next day rolls around and the streets are already packed with people just doing their thing. Brebens rolled through the streets in his carriage, super excited to see how the crowd would freak out over the news about the hunt for that bride snatcher, Typhon. Everyone was glued to the announcement, but things got sketchy when a second poster suddenly appeared right next to Gotswan's. Everyone was shocked to see two crazy wanted posters, one hunting Typhon through space and another for a guy who snatched a princess from her wedding. But the photos didn't look anything alike. Brabin and his ministers didn't make this poster, and it shows a super happy Typhon standing right next to her friend. Number 296, the potential king frozen horror, definitely didn't see this coming. Everyone was laughing at Brabin like he was a total joke, and since even the newspapers couldn't figure out the truth, people just kept arguing over what really happened. They basically decided nobody kidnapped the princess and that she just ran off to some other universe, which made our girl so mad she could barely keep her cool. But those guys wouldn't quit, constantly trash-talking him for losing his fiancée and calling Raven a total weakling who couldn't even keep his girl. The whole town started roasting him, bragging they could have done way better, while all the girls and women nearby were absolutely losing it. The hero let out a shocked scream, totally losing it because they actually had the nerve to call him a weakling. He stormed back to the palace and slammed the office door open, shouting for the goth to show up right now. But he wasn't meeting his minister. Instead, a massive army of spirits loyal to Typhon was already there waiting for him. The second Brabin walked in, everyone started grilling him for answers, especially since he was holding the exact same posters they saw back in the square. They cornered the hero, realizing he knew Universe was alive the whole time, and demanded to know what that announcement really meant when it told them to find out if he was dead or alive. Everyone was losing it because Braband was a total fake, and it turns out Vort was the one hired to paint Princess Typhon's portrait. The Spirit King is going to be totally furious since this kid has zero heart, and once their deal with Typhon falls apart, it's going to be wild seeing what Brabin does next. Brabin was absolutely fuming as he pointed at the spirits and started trashing them, yelling that they were making a huge deal out of nothing and shouldn't wreck their alliance over it. Then he finally lost it too, throwing his arms out wide and yelling that the whole universe is just shameless before bursting into a huge laugh. Our hero finally snapped and told them he could wipe out the whole spirit country in a heartbeat and bury every last one of them. Princess Typhon's guards were totally insulted, so they just walked out and left the weak guy all by himself. He let out a huge sigh and rolled his eyes, wishing he'd just done it sooner so he could have skipped all that boring talk. He finally made his move, sprinting through the castle's long hallways to reach a door way off in the distance. He walks into a dark office and sees a guy in a crown sitting right in the middle, who tells him he just got a letter from the afterlife saying their alliance is totally over. The kid was totally caught off guard and just froze up while the king started yelling for answers about what was going on. Brabin tried to play it off, saying the ministers were way too full of themselves and every single spirit had to pay the price for their sins. The quiet, serious guy didn't even let Brabandu finish his sentence, shutting the cocky kid up with just one word. He stood there like a kid who just got chewed out, looking at his dad in total shock because he had no idea why he was being punished so hard. With the demon lord finally out of the picture, the king says every nation now fears their power, so if they can just force the spirit people to surrender, they'll rule the entire world, and there's no way he's letting a chance like this go to waste. The king dropped a huge bomb by calling off the wedding with the spirit's daughter, leaving Brabin totally confused and with no clue how to chill his dad out. The king clenched his fist and shouted that if his son didn't listen, he'd fix the alliance himself and kick his useless kid out of the palace. Brabin was standing right outside his dad's office when the massive door suddenly slammed shut, leaving him totally alone and confused. He looked totally shocked and crushed, wondering why his own dad would just call him a pathetic loser and a total waste of space. Spirits swarmed the hero and looked down on him like he was total trash, acting like he was so gross they didn't even want to acknowledge he was there. The guy dropped into a deep bow to show some serious respect, making it clear he was actually super sorry for what happened. He could barely choke out an apology, begging for forgiveness for all the mean things he said. He was absolutely fuming and heartbroken inside, but he bit his lip to stay calm, swearing he wouldn't let this pathetic world take Princess Typhon away when he needed her so badly. The spirits just laughed. Then one of them stepped up and told him they all wanted to hear a real apology. The hero looked up, totally fuming, but then he realized he messed up and quickly slapped on a super awkward fake smile. He told them straight up that they can't demand a real apology when they won't even bow their heads or show him any respect. The spirits were totally fuming, so they immediately started plotting to strip him of his hero title and made it clear he owed a massive apology to way more than just them. He was barely holding it together, veins popping on his face as he bit his lip, wondering if they really thought he was just a total loser, but he didn't dare say it out loud. His hands were shaking as he dropped to the ground, getting into the exact pose the spiritual servants demand for a real apology. Face down on the ground, the guy swore he'd return the universe to his home and begged them not to trash their alliance. The spirit boss called Breben out for getting it all wrong, telling him he actually owed an apology to the universe and Princess Typhon, but being told to say sorry to the very people. He looked up and swore he'd apologize once he finally got back home, because saying it now is totally pointless if they can't even hear him anyway. One of the spirits says it's finally time for an apology and a chance to talk, but they really just want to make sure the hero is actually being for real. Breben gritted his teeth in total rage, feeling like he was being clowned on. There was no way he was going to apologize to these losers. To him, that would be the ultimate. He kept telling himself they weren't around, and there was no way they could hear a single word he said. He finally worked up the guts to ask if the alliance would stay together if he apologized to the spirits, and the minister stood tall, telling him straight up that the spirits actually keep their promises, unlike. He sat down to cool off, admitted he totally messed up, and promised he'd never force Typhon to do anything again, even swearing he wouldn't blame her for mistakes if she just came back. The spirits completely froze in shock, totally blindsided by these new secrets about the princess and Breben they knew absolutely nothing about. The kid realized he'd said way too much and got so nervous he bit his lip until it started bleeding, but he didn't even notice. He kept begging to come back to work, whining about how he was treated unfairly, and even promised to fire Gatsunan and make the guy a minister just to seal the deal. Our hero was freaking out since he'd never apologized before, and he was so mad that the veins in his eyes literally popped, filling them with blood. The hero tried to force a smile while the spirits crowded around a weird machine, cheering about how perfectly everything worked out. Brabend was totally losing hope when he pointed at the machine and asked what it was, and the spirit told him, "It's a magic device that broadcasts every word you say straight to the entire universe." The spirit says this gadget is way better than a photo because it records video and sound, and right then, it starts playing a clip of Braband apologizing. The spirits were already vanishing as our hero sat there totally dazed, while the group hyped up getting their reporter friend to blast the footage to the entire world. Out of nowhere, the guy leaped up like a total beast, growling and charging at the spirits until they freaked out and bolted. He snatched the minister and that magic gadget, saying he was going to wreck it because if people found out, his reputation would be totally trashed. The spirits looked at him with total disgust as they snatched the device, shocked he had the guts to act like that in his state, while Brabin desperately yelled that he'd been framed. The spirits finally left the poor guy alone, promising they were chill now, but the hero was still stressing out and begging them to delete that super embarrassing video of his apology. As soon as the spirits walked away, Breben hit the floor like a total baby, kicking and screaming for everyone to stop and clean up the mess right now. The fugitives were already rolling through the kingdom of Aswampu, and Typhon was super hyped to see a pond right in front of them. She's literally jumping for joy while showing her friend the view, totally obsessed with the glowing lake as the whole world seems to cheer them on. He explains that Vampu is famous for its beautiful lakes, including the biggest one on Earth that's so massive it looks just like the sea. Once she heard the news, she got super hyped and said she just had to see this insane sight for herself. The universe finally realized the truth. Typhon is the princess of the wind spirits, and she's never even stepped foot outside her own country. The guy promised they'd swing by even if it was a detour, and the princess was so hyped, she thanked the universe and gave Trans a huge shout-out for driving them. They finally get there and spot a massive poster that's got everyone staring, but right behind it is a stunning lake that looks totally unreal, so Typhon heads straight for it. The lakefront was a total party with everyone dancing and grabbing drinks while others cooked up a feast as music and laughter blasted across the beach. The girl was shocked by how nice and cool it felt there. People in swimsuits were everywhere, and a path led straight down to the lake. But the universe was totally miserable and wanted to get. The princess was all fired up as she reached out to the guy, telling him to keep going and have a blast just like everyone else there. Just as the guys were having a total blast, a scary dude shouted from behind, making them stop dead in their tracks and turn around. This guy in a hat and glasses took a serious puff of his cigar and told them both to stop rushing and just stay put. Loquat was the guy running the lake, and he held up 2 fingers to show that the entry fee was 10,000 enda each, which includes a BBQ set and some extra gear, so he demanded 20,000 enda from the pair right on the spot. The whole universe and Typhon were completely stunned, and the kid could barely get the words out to ask why the price was so insane. He looked back with a smirk and told them that being a hero always comes with a price. Everything stopped as he realized hero merch prices are totally insane, and he started doing the math on how much all those Bray Band posters and plaques would actually cost. The guy asked if the universe was basically just a kid with 20,000 different endings, and when he got 0 response, he just let out a massive sigh. Locke then made a deal that really set the couple off, saying he'd cut the price in half if they brought a girl in a swimsuit, and if she was super pretty, he'd even throw in a free gift. Princess Typhon was definitely cooking something up, and with a glint in her eye, she completely flipped the script on the entire universe. She told him to hold up for a second and dashed back to the carriage they arrived in. Loquat and Universe stood around waiting until the princess finally showed up and apologized for being late. Shaylee started flexing her new look, and it turns out she only ran away to change into a swimsuit. The lake manager was totally hyped to see it, while her friend was just standing there. Quat was literally tearing up because it looked so beautiful, giving a double thumbs up and telling the guys to go have the time of their lives. Typhoon strutted ahead, totally vibing and humming to herself, while the guy trailed behind, nervously checking his surroundings. The second they hit the beach, every guy's eyes were glued to the gorgeous girl, and they totally ignored the dude she was with. They totally swarmed her and started firing off questions about where she was from and if she was alone, with one guy even asking if spirits really liked serving people and what her favorite things were. The girl breaks free and rushes to hug the universe, which is totally clueless as she tells it she's just there to serve it. He looked away, realizing he probably sounded way too mean. He was totally shocked when all those guys suddenly glared at him and scattered across the beach in an instant. Typhoon was all smiles as she clung to Universe's arm, super proud of what she just told the group, and Universe finally breathed easy, knowing they had one less massive problem on their hands. He said it was time to head out, and she just smiled, looking totally happy with how things turned out. She gave him a sweet smile and suggested that since they were already there, they should just walk around and check out the view. He caught those guys pointing and talking trash out of the corner of his eye, so he finally listened to the girl and they just kept walking like it was no big deal. As soon as they hit the lakeshore, Typhon was totally stunned because she'd never seen a view this beautiful in her entire life. She noticed it was a bit chilly by the water but still felt awesome, and she felt the universe telling her to let go so she wouldn't get all dirty. The kid told them he was just in his work gear and that's why he stunk like oil. The princess wasn't even sweating it because she was totally sure everything was fine, seeing it as proof that the universe was working right alongside the spirits. Feeling pretty smug, she leaned in even closer while he just stood there stuttering her name. Suddenly, her stomach lets out a massive growl that stops them both. It's pretty clear she's totally starving. Typhoon looked away, totally embarrassed, but the boy stayed calm and realized their growling stomachs meant they hadn't eaten since way back in the morning. Since they were already there, he told them they should totally grab some barbecue. She agreed, but she was totally restless because she couldn't wait another second to finally grab a bite of something tasty. The two of them headed straight for the tables to get their BBQ started. They grabbed a special mix called Mozon that was packed with all kinds of different ingredients. Typhoon was super hyped to tell him she'd already finished everything while he was still busy at the grill. As the coals started to glow, the kid told them he already had the grill fired up and ready for some food. He slapped the meat onto the grill like a pro, and that delicious smell filled the air instantly. The food smelled so incredible that even the people at the next table couldn't stop staring at it. Juicy meat, fish, and even shrimp sizzled on the grill, and the smell of those juices hitting the coals was enough to make anyone's mouth water. 404. The group sitting right next to them was dying for a taste, but they stayed back because they didn't want to look like total beggars. Universe hands Typhon her meal and warns her to watch out because it's still steaming hot. So she thanks him while getting totally hyped to finally dig in. She stabbed a piece of meat with her fork, and it was so fresh and steaming hot, that the juices were literally dripping right onto the floor. Typhon took a bite of the meat and her face immediately flushed from the heat, but she loved it so much that she took her sweet time savoring every single bite. She finished her meal and shouted about how amazing it was, literally drooling with stars in her eyes. Typhona jumped toward Universe with her eyes glowing, screaming that it was the best food she'd ever had. Universe was super confused and told her she was totally overdoing it, with Typhoon brought over a seafood feast and bragged about how meaty the shrimp were. Then she dug into the clams and hyped up how tender they tasted before licking her fork with a huge, satisfied smile. Everyone on the beach was drooling over the girl's food, but the Universe said their fire was just way too wild to cook kebabs that good. He kept flipping the seafood on the grill, reminding himself to use the heat from the coals instead of the flames. But honestly, the cooking wasn't even the main point here. The Universe announced that thanks to the fire and forest spirits, they'd cooked up the most legendary BBQ ever, and thanked the whole squad for their epic teamwork. The guys move out of the way as the forest and fire spirits tell them to keep him in their thoughts, and the fire spirit starts venting about how humans are totally clueless for thinking they control fire. The kid explains that mixing spirit powers makes you way stronger and unlocks new skills, like how combining fire and forest spirits gives you warmth and awesome food. When you're combining powers, some spirits are just going to clash, so don't force them to fight. Just ask them to work together instead. He remembered using his spirit tamer powers to ask the spirits for help making up, and it worked so well they became best friends who are now totally inseparable. She called him over and told him to open wide, and as the whole universe seemed to open up, she just smiled and fed him a bite with her fork. Typhon told him to dig in since he made the food, and when he asked if it was good, the boy just nodded at the girl while chewing away. The kid realized the flavor was still off, but while the universe stared at the sky, it thought the lake moss tasted like the best steak ever. And then the boy turned around and spotted The poster showed a guy in a raincoat holding a fish next to some other people, and right above them was a leaderboard where the top catch weighed a massive 70 kilograms. The kid realized Typhon looked exactly like the person who took the photo, and as Typhon held his plate and fork to speak to the universe, the boy actually answered the call. The universe just smiled and told her it was finally time to get a real Mosin ready for her. She stood up looking totally lost and asked if this was a miracle, but the universe told her she was wrong. It was all real, and there was something way cooler waiting in the lake. This kid nearby starts roasting the heroes, asking if they're even going to catch anything, or if they're just total failures. He tries to act tough for his friend by saying even a mosquito bite. The guys made a deal that whoever wins the argument gets to keep Typhon. Everyone was down for it, and even more people jumped into the game. The girl was totally fuming as she glared. The universe looked into the water and told the spirit it had been way too long since they last met, while the boy asked if he could chill in that spot again just like before. The water actually started moving the second the boy opened his mouth. A face suddenly popped up right on the water's surface, revealing the lake spirit as it gave the boy a super warm smile. The lake spirit asked the universe if it was calling him, realized it was, and announced he'd finally made it while the boy just looked up and grinned. The lake spirit told him the bait was ready but warned that the fish was a total beast and he should stay back, even though he could summon it with just a snap. And the boy just... The kid started walking away from the lake as people watching wondered if he'd finally quit. And the universe was totally hyped about it. Bubbles started popping up everywhere, and suddenly the whole lake went wild and began to spin into a massive whirlpool. A massive fish bursts out of the water with a huge splash, and while the universe totally expected the Mason to pull this off, Typhon is hyped for the meal while the rest of the guys are just standing there in total shock. This massive Amazon stepped onto the shore, looking way bigger than any normal guy, while everyone in the back started freaking out and asking what was going on. The guys behind him were totally tripping over how he caught that fish so easily with such a weird move, and even though they started making fun of him, he didn't care at all because Typhoon crossed her arms with a big smile, totally hyping the hero up for being so cool. He's holding the fish by its tail while the girl next to him is jumping for joy, and suddenly a whole squad of girls in swimsuits comes rushing up from behind. A bunch of girls swarm the heroes and start flirting with the guy, saying he's a total legend for catching that giant mouse, while Typhon just glares at them with pure disgust. The boys weighed the catch and were totally blown away because it was hundreds of kilograms, so they started hyping the fisherman up like he was some kind of legendary hero, but he knew they were. The guys were laughing and messing around, asking the universe to hook them up with some of that power too. The guys grabbed the fish and the knife to pull Mason back, but Typhon spotted them and yelled for them to stop right there. She pointed her finger at them, totally fuming as she demanded to know who said they could eat that. As a massive typhoon rolled in, she pointed at herself and screamed at the sky, asking what the universe had hunted for her. But when a boy suggested sharing the huge prize with everyone, she shut him down instantly. She totally lost it on the guys, reminding them how they mocked the universe before the fish was even split, and telling them to remember what they said, but they just stared at her like they had no idea what she meant. The boys looked everywhere but at Tiffin because they felt so bad, eventually dropping to their knees to apologize and swearing to the heroes they'd never mess up like that again. She wasn't buying their apology at all, so she snapped at them to do it again, making them bow their heads way lower at the same time, and the guys actually listened. Tiff shut him down and said she wouldn't even look at Amazon without a perfect apology, but the guy just stood there with a super awkward smile and a nervous laugh. She threw her hands up and shouted for him to say sorry again, while the whole universe watched and wondered where Typhon learned to talk back like that. The poster just updated to show the universe and Typhon, with a massive 100-kilogram moza right in the front. A horse carriage was being prepped for the trip, and just as Tiffany agreed to head out first like the MC asked, a sudden voice called out and made her spin around. The kids at the beach waved goodbye, thanking the heroes for the epic memories and promising to spread the legend of the mysterious universe to everyone they meet. The heroes hopped into the carriage and waved goodbye to everyone as the sun began to set. The universe explains it only gave humans fish skin, and Typhon is totally let down since she's human and hates skin. But the boy suddenly remembers that people actually love eating fish skin. He bragged that his record-breaking catch was stashed in a magic freezer, and the girl cheered with her hands up, saying she'd never been this happy in her life. It felt like the whole universe was happy they finally stopped right there, and the girl just looked at the hero and smiled. Typhoon leaned her head back and closed her eyes, feeling totally grateful for everything as they kept writing. But the guy told her it was finally time to crash in the carriage bed since the sun was. He realized they were being hunted, and staying in the carriage would give away that they were the stolen hero cards, which totally shocked the girl. Typhoon told the boy she felt totally safe with him no matter where they went, but Universe kept his eyes on the road and said they should stop in a field until the boy. The girl pumped her fist with a huge smile and shouted that they were going, and now they're finally on their way to Aiden village. Past those silent houses, a trail leads through the woods to a creepy mountain well that's making a seriously terrifying noise. Check out the city of Aiden, where crowds are hanging out by the houses and statues. And there's even a poster of a kid calling himself a hero alongside a girl. Universe and Typhon were totally stunned as they walked through the city, and while the boy asked if they'd finally arrived, the girl just smiled at the massive crowd of people everywhere. The two of them start checking out this statue, and when the girl asks if it's a hero, the guy totally agrees, at least until she realizes the boy's own face. Tifona walked up to the guy looking totally crushed, telling him how messed up the world was, but he just closed his eyes and tried to chill her out, saying it was all just a little mix-up. The universe was basically screaming at them to move on, but she just puffed out her cheeks and turned away. This guy carrying a bucket accidentally slams right into a girl as he's walking by. He quickly says sorry, and she tells him it's totally fine and not to worry about it. There was this kid in the village who was totally convinced he was a legendary hero. He was super full of himself and decided it was finally time for a good-looking guy like him to. The boys walk up to the group to talk, but when they turn around, a guy with a cane and a headscarf recognizes Universe, making him back up right into Typhon. An old lady points her cane at the kid and asks the crowd if they remember this total loser. The whole world is completely confused and starts denying that it's really him. She gives a creepy smirk. The old lady's face twisted in total disgust as she claimed the whole universe had ticked off Mrs. Aiden's spirit, while stories of the hero saving the village spread everywhere and started drawing crowds right to him. Universe was totally caught off guard but still asked to crash there for the night, only for the old lady to shut him down instantly, screaming that Lady Aiden was already pissed and their well was running dry, so letting a criminal like him stay would basically destroy the village. This old lady with a cane walks off, promising to set up a meeting between our hero and Mrs. Aiden so she can finally get her spark back and start taking over the whole universe. She started to realize this guy wasn't the hero she dreamed of, and while she peeked behind Universe, the hero just started showing off for her. But then Typhon grabbed his cloak and felt. The Universe asked Grandma for a meeting, but she just got even angrier and told him he'd officially lost his mind. Everyone looked to the old lady as their leader, and when she asked what they wanted, they told her the universe helped them before, but it was nothing like a hero. The hero walked up to the villagers and rubbed his chin, and the old woman realized he was actually thinking about handing the kid over to Aiden to make the world a better place. The hero stopped to think, looking totally annoyed as he asked if this was really the sacrifice they needed. He even said that once he was done, he'd just toss the whole universe into a. The whole squad is trekking up the mountain. A guy with a lantern leads the way with our hero right behind him. 2 others are on the sides lugging the village chief along and bringing up the pa. The girl asked the universe if they were really coming for her. The boy looked over at Typhon, and she said she just knew these people were up to no good. The boy just grinned at Typhon and told her to take it back, explaining that Eden is only a spirit, and they're stuck here because he messed up an explanation a long time ago, leaving her staring at him in total shock. An old lady shines her flashlight and tells them they've finally made it to a well with a tiny wooden temple, and it's totally surrounded by statues and posters of a hero holding a girl in his arms. That well looked super creepy and was making some seriously weird noises that made everyone freeze in shock. But then an old lady shoved Universe and told him to finally get over there. Universe was staring hard at the well without saying a word, and as the boy got closer, Typhon just watched Universe in total silence. All of a sudden, crazy loud noises started blasting out of the well, and everyone just froze in total shock. 486. Everyone's staring at the well in total terror when suddenly a creepy black hand reaches out, followed by a head with long hair as the thing starts crawling out. She hid her whole face behind her long hair. Only one single eye was staring out from the shadows. You could tell she was both terrified and totally furious. She reached her hand out toward the crowd. She grit her teeth and reached out with her mouth wide open, her hair flying everywhere while her eyes looked totally blank. The girl lets out a piercing scream, sending the guys running for their lives. This black-haired girl was honestly just looking for a hero to save her. She locks her sights right on the boy. Out of nowhere, the girl lunges at the hero and slams him into the dirt. Everyone spins around in total shock, screaming out for him as they panic. He's pinned right under her. She grabbed the hero with one hand and raised her other arm to land a massive hit. Something kept smashing our hero right in the face, and the kid started screaming for help at the top of his lungs. The old lady was shaking with fear and begged Mrs. Aiden to stop beating on the hero, pointing right at the couple and yelling, "There's that idiot Universe!" She finally stopped her beatdown and slowly whispered the name of the universe, but the hero was already totally out cold. Miss Eden whipped around with a super creepy smile right as she finished saying the boy's name. Universe and Typhon watched Odin in total silence until a ghost lady suddenly rushed them, making a terrified Typhon grab the boy's shoulder. Out of nowhere, Mrs. Aiden's face totally lit up with a huge smile. She reached out and gave Universe a warm welcome like he was a total legend. The girl lunged forward. Way back in the past, the hero's squad went to a village to get a power boost from the spirit of the well to beat the demon lord. But the hero's assistant, Yuga, Lady Aiden, the spirit of the well, was totally losing her cool. But as soon as she saw the hero, her rage just melted away, and Lady Odin promised to stay by his side forever because she was so head over heels. Back in the present, she gives him a total death stare and yells his name. Miss Aiden lunges straight for Universe, but he's not even sweating it and doesn't move an inch. Typhon shouted for the kid and dashed over to help, but her eyes suddenly turned cold. The girl looked on as Mrs. Aiden pulled Universe into a big hug and welcomed him. Tafana was totally blown away because Lady Aida looked like a little kid with gill-shaped ears and a short bob, wearing a kimono with a big bow and acting so happy to see them that she even started talking about herself in the third person. Our hero finally snaps out of it and flinches when he sees the chaos unfolding. Lady Ada admits she never forgot about the universe and thought about it every single night. Typhoon is absolutely... The old lady was literally shaking as she asked Lady Aiden if she seriously didn't hate the whole universe. Mrs. O'Don looked back and told the old lady she was totally wrong because she actually loved the universe. But the old lady got worried and said the hero himself told her that. So a group of 4 led by a hero pulls up to a well, and he shouts for the spirit inside to come out and face him. But all he gets back is dead silence. Our hero was getting totally ignored, and he was starting to look seriously ticked off. The girl in the scarf turned to Braben and handed him a bottle of poison. Universe joined the squad as their 5th. Our hero dumps poison into the well, looks up at the sky, and whispers that the universe is late again, right as a totally furious Mrs. Aiden crawls out. She starts wailing on the hero, but he just blocks her hits and begs her to quit it. Even when she drops a bribe on the ground, he still tells her to stop. It's the middle of the night, and Lady Eden is curled up crying from the poison, while Universe sits by her side and warns that the village wells are going to be hit next if they don't stop this. Looking totally heartbroken, the guy apologized for the hero's mess and said he didn't even deserve her forgiveness. But he begged for just one favor, making her ask what he was really after. The universe reached for the sky, called out to the spirits, and asked the girl for help, while Lady Eden just looked up and waited. Out of nowhere, a swarm of fireflies lit up the pitch-black night. They swirled around Mrs. Aiden as she realized these were actually the spirits of spring. These little guys looked just... To Mrs. Eden, Universe looked like a total prince saving a princess, and as the whole world started to glow like a fairy tale, he reached out his hand and told her everything was okay and it was time to head out. She grabbed the prince's hand and marched right ahead. Miss Aiden and Universe grabbed hands and started floating into the sky, giving each other a look that said everything. The townspeople were totally furious and started trash-talking the hero for being such a jerk, while Mrs. Aiden actually started feeling bad for the worker, and the girl, still clutching the boy's shirt, turned to the crowd and asked why they wouldn't just believe her. Mrs. Aiden grabbed the girl's forehead and lifted her brow, revealing a mysterious symbol that actually means good. Suddenly, she starts glowing all on her own, and this crazy light just starts pouring out of her tiny body. Everyone shielded their eyes from the blinding glow as they realized Ms. Aiden's mark just hit level 4, and the girl cheered that she was finally happy to be back at the university. Lady Aiden threw her hands up and yelled that she was feeling some insane power. The villagers followed her gaze and stood there totally frozen, just waiting for something to happen. Right then, water started blasting out of the well behind her like a giant fountain. Everyone on the street was totally caught off guard when water started bursting out of every single well in the city. Everyone was hyped that the hero made Mrs. Aiden smile again. One neighbor joked she was only in a good mood because the poor guy was suffering. Meanwhile, Ray-Ban was low-key. Lady Aiden told the village elder the rumors were totally wrong because she wasn't into the hero at all. She was actually obsessed with the whole universe. She told them straight up that whenever the universe is close, she's so hyped that her happiness will literally never run out. Everyone bowed down to Lady Eden, and the guy was just relieved the drama was finally over. But then someone suddenly snatched the universe by the hand. The boy spins around to see Typhon hugging Universe from behind, making her blush and look away with a cute pout. The universe stared at its friend in total shock and asked what was wrong, and the girl just shook as she started to speak. Typhon grabbed the guy's shirt, looked down all shy, and told him she didn't care one bit. The village chief finally came back to Universe and dropped to her knees to apologize for being so rude, leaving him totally stunned as he awkwardly told her it was no big deal. The old lady gave him a huge smile and said, Universe was basically their hero and master for saving the village, so he should totally make himself at home. The leader started taking the boys toward the hotel, but the boy turned back to look at Ms. Eden, who was just chilling on the well and staring up at the sky. Mrs. Ada sadly admitted she was stuck at the well, but the boy just flashed a smile and promised he'd come see her one more time before leaving town. Miss Aiden flashed a sweet smile now that the universe had finally forgiven her. A super friendly girl in a kimono met them at the entrance, wishing them a great stay and mentioning they were the only ones there since the hotel wasn't even open yet. She led the couple to the room and bragged about being the absolute best, while Typhon scoped out the place and immediately started spinning on the floor. She tells him the hotel is famous for its epic baths, with pools both inside and out under the open sky, right as Typhon steps onto the balcony to look down. Typhon asked the girl about the outdoor baths. The boy thought they should jump in for a swim. Typhon was totally down for the idea. The bath was built with smooth wood. The water was... He was just chilling in the tub next to all those little perfume bottles and said he was totally loving it. He told the spirits they did an awesome job today while they just splashed around and had fun in the water. The universe heard a noise and spun around to see what was up, just as the boy realized someone was creeping up on him. With a towel wrapped around her head, she struts right into the bath with a huge smile, leaving the guy completely shocked. Universe snapped at Typhon that she was in the guy's bath, but she just said the girl's side was empty, and she didn't want to be lonely. The girls plopped down right next to him and asked to join since the place was empty, and even though he was totally caught off guard, the guy said yes as Typhon slowly dipped her. She dunked herself underwater and said it felt like all her stress just melted away. And as the guy smiled about how wild their day had been, Tiffany admitted she was actually freaked out when she thought the hero was real because he looked nothing like himself. She looked ahead and said the hero's aura felt totally fake, making the boy stop to think as he stared out too. The universe answered back, showing that humans and spirits see the world in totally different ways. And then Typhon locked eyes with the kid. Suddenly, she jumps up and points ahead, thinking the fake hero is hiding there, while right by the bath, a boy with a totally swollen face is slumped in a chair with her sitting on the floor. He kicks her and yells at her to hurry up, and she just takes it, doing exactly what this fake hero says. Everyone was whispering about how Mrs. Eaton totally trashed him, saying the truth about this fake hero was finally coming out. But as the girl wiped the dirt off his face, she suddenly... The guy grabs the girl's hand and tells her it's not worth it, and they should just turn back, and even though she looks like she wants to say something, she stays totally silent. This makes the beaten-up hero lose his mind, screaming insults because he can't believe anyone would dare talk back to a hero like him. The kid finally stood up to that fake hero and called him out, asking how anyone could back someone who disrespected Mrs. Eden, especially since her getting mad could make their well-run dry all over. Ray-Ban jumped out of his seat and screamed that he'd kick all their families out of the village since his parents owned the land. But while the boys didn't even look back, the girl gave him one last glance. The kid was absolutely fuming and started screaming insults at everyone living near the well. Water blasted out of the well like a fountain, sending the hero flying into the air with a scream as he begged for help, terrified he was going to freeze to death. Typhon and the whole university watched the hero blast over the water, joking about how they'd love to go for a swim while checking out the awesome view. Wiping her hand, she bragged about how lucky she was to dodge marrying a hero and scrubbing his back, and seeing her so hyped, the boy just looked at her and grinned. She finally snapped out of it, shook off the chills, splashed some water, and then offered to rub his back, leaving the guy totally shocked and confused by the sudden move. The universe really called her out because she literally just said she wasn't helping anyone. She told him the hero only got in trouble because he treated the spirits like trash, but she wanted to thank her friend for being kind, even if it was just a tiny bit. Typhon smirked and offered to help the kid out again, leaving the boy to stare at the sky while he thought it over. The guy begs her to go easy on him, and she's totally down for it. He's just chilling in a towel while she starts the massage. She kneels down with a... She flinched and scrambled back, yelling something about the guy's back, but the rest of the world didn't even blink. Typhon stared at the kid's mangled back and asked how he even got hurt that bad. She asks about the fool scar on his skin, so Universe tells her the dark truth. Back when they fought the Demon Lord, he was nothing but bait. He was forced to trigger. Typhon couldn't stand seeing him like this anymore, so she pulled the boy into a hug from behind because she felt so sorry for him. She broke down in tears, asking why he was still trying so hard to save everyone when his own pain was way worse than theirs. The universe just smiled and told her the problem wasn't its body. It just couldn't stand seeing the spirits it cared for, or its inventions in pain, so it tried to protect everyone while the girl just kept on crying. She toughened up and told him that since his body was in such a mess, she was going to give him a serious scrub down. He whipped around, totally shocked, because he'd never heard anyone explain how the whole universe actually works before. The girl and her little crew jumped right in and started scrubbing the guy like crazy. The kid was losing it laughing and begged her to stop scrubbing because it tickled so much, so she just sat down next to him with a big grin. He was the first one back to the room, saying he was wiped out from laughing but felt totally recharged, so he had to get the futon ready before Typhon showed up. Universe was just walking along with his eyes closed, drying his hair with the towel around his neck, until he suddenly looked up and froze in total shock. 7 gorgeous girls in robes were all gathered right around the guys on the futon. The girls called the universe their hero and promised to protect it all night, while one of them jokingly told it to really appreciate their thanks. The kid was totally caught off guard and started backing away from her hands. The girls laid him out on the floor and surrounded him. Then one of them used her teeth to yank the belt right off his robe. She locked eyes with Shyly and unbuckled his belt, leaving his chest and stomach totally exposed. She reached out and touched his stomach, and the whole universe shut its eyes and started praying for mercy. Just like that, the girls scrambled to the corners of the room to get as far away from him as possible. The girl starts plummeting out the window as the typhoon blasts its magic to clear out those annoying ladies, but the boy just fixes his cloak and thanks her for the save. Tafona stood right in front of him, getting totally flustered by his gaze as her face turned bright red and she clutched her robe, but before he could even get a word out, she shut him down. The typhoon actually dropped to its knees and bowed, saying that even though it's super wild, it wants to be looked after. She flashed a smile, her face turned a little pink, and she locked eyes with him. Typhon said the universe always had her back, so now she was going to step up and protect it just for him. The guy is totally clueless, while the girl just looks away because she's super shy. Typhon suddenly scrambles up onto the futon and asks if he can stand guard all night so the boy can finally get some peaceful sleep. He snapped and asked if she even got what that meant, but she just said she did and pulled out a book. Phoenix flips to the night duty section and reads that the first rule is for the boy to rest his head on her lap, so she closes her eyes and tells him to lay right there. The entire universe was literally bowing at her feet, and even though she felt super awkward, she just checked her book to see what to do next. She checked to see if he was doing okay before she kept going, and he just gave her a silent nod to show he was all good. She paused for a second and decided she had to tell a legendary bedtime story. Typhon started guessing what she was up to. She saw he was curious and jumped right into the tale, and the She made a face and shared a story from her ghost buddy Fuki, saying that as soon as night hits, the painting in the music room starts acting totally bizarre. She was totally hitting her limit and started getting all twitchy, hating on herself for being such a bad storyteller, until a memory finally clicked. He shut his eyes and asked if she thought night stories were just ghost stories. Then he stood up and totally whacked his head. She backed away from the guy and started shaking her legs because they'd gone totally numb, and even though she was hurting from the cramps, the whole universe was watching her with a big smile. He turns to look at her and sees she's already totally knocked out and snoring, so he just smiles and says she fell asleep as fast as a little kitten. He looked right at her and flashed a big grin. It felt like the entire universe was finally happy again after a long time, and as he grabbed the blanket, the girl actually thanked him in her sleep, telling him how glad she was to be with him while he quietly finished setting up her bed. The whole universe wrapped around the sleeping girl, thanking her for those super honest words. It was already pitch black outside as the boy finally said goodnight to his friend. Morning hits, and as the kid climbs out of his futon, he realizes his entire world has been turned completely upside down. Universe stepped out onto the porch and spotted Hyphen totally passed out on a busted wall covered in dead leaves. He scooped her up so carefully she stayed fast asleep, and right then, the village elder walked over to wish them a quiet good morning. An old lady nods and says she saw the couple having a blast yesterday, and now they're already fixing the place up with Mrs. Eden working her heart out to make sure everything goes perfectly. The spirit girl told the workers they'd need signs too and pointed right down the path. Typhon starts to wake up, and the girl is totally stunned, staring ahead and wondering what kind of crazy, impossible scene she's even looking at. The chief thinks the art is awesome because it shows unicorns saving Lady Eden, while the old lady points out that the villagers have been drinking from her well their whole lives. The leader says everyone's happiness depends entirely on her, and Ms. Aiden is just now putting the pieces together. The grandma bowed to the hero and told him she's officially done respecting him, because from now on, she only answers to Lady Eden and her favorite uniates. The universe felt super awkward and told them to cut it out, so the leader just smirked at the boy and said Mrs. Eden sent her to remind the universe to come visit her soon. Typhon and Universe were heading up to see Ms. Idona while chatting about the new posters around town, and when Universe noticed she looked just like the earth spirit Nuru Kiara, Typhon smiled and said that while the spirit is super popular, she's the real beauty to him. The boys walked up to the well, and Mrs. Eden was right there, staring them down from the other side. Clutching her weapon, the girl said she was waiting for Lord Universe, while Miss Aiden explained it was a legendary sacred sword from the well and begged Universe to take it with him. Typhon scrambled back in total shock and finally started talking. The Universe's satellite shared a crazy legend that if you pull the sword from the well, water gushes out and the blade turns into liquid, and rumors say it can even slice the moon in. The Universe asked why she was giving away something so priceless, explaining that if the hero officially claimed it, he'd never be able to give Lady Aiden's sword back. The Lady of the Wells revealed that as they started their journey, the hero demanded the sacred sword again, but when she said no, he poisoned the well with a dose way more powerful than last time. The boy was totally shocked, asking if the hero seriously poisoned Lady Aiden's well again. The spirit lady said that to save the village and stay alive, she had to fall into a deep sleep right at the bottom of the well, deep under the water. Standing at the edge, the lady explained that's exactly why she let the well dry up. The heroes stayed quiet, and Aiden didn't say a word while she spoke. Lady Odin suddenly looked super stressed, handing over her sword and begging Zdovik to never let it leave his side, while Typhon felt for the kid and told him he should just take the gift. The girls wouldn't stop asking questions as the boy gripped the sword with both hands, and Universe started checking it out super closely. The Universe looked at Lady Aiden with a grin and promised to keep the sword she gave him safe. Mrs. Aiden chilled out, tilted her head to the side, and flashed a smile the moment she heard what the boy had to say. The well spirit just smiled and told them everything was totally cool now. She stayed right there, standing on the very edge of the well. She opened her arms wide and started vanishing into a bright. Ms. Ida floated up and started disappearing into thin air, but she just kept smiling and told everyone they'd definitely see her again. Typhon yells that she knows the sword will vanish if she lets go. The entire universe is screaming for Lady Odin to hold on, and the spirit just watches them with a calm smile. As she started fading away into the glowing light, Eden thanked everyone for everything and told them she was so happy they met before saying her final goodbye. Fona reached out and yelled for her to wait, shouting that they were friends now and she couldn't just leave, while the boy gave Mrs. Aiden a totally heartbroken look. A girl's scream echoes through the mountains, just as the sun dips behind the peaks and night starts to close in. The guys were heading to the village, and Typhon was low-key sobbing and wiping her eyes while Universe walked silently beside her, until someone suddenly asked her what was wrong. The girl looked back and was shocked to see Lady Aiden sitting right there by the well, but as soon as Typhon called out to her, the spirit totally started shaking. Typhon stood there frozen in shock, pointing at Aiden and screaming that she was supposed to be dead. The kid just watched the whole thing with his jaw on the floor, totally speechless. Mao. The lady's spirit was stoked because she was finally free from that sword well, and now she can jump between any well she wants. Lady Aiden was super hyped and thanked the guys for pulling off that insane sword mission, but Typhon was basically crying because he felt totally played, while the whole universe celebrated now that everything. This skinny guy was shaking while tapping his screwdriver against the machine, totally losing it because his legendary mentor Gats just got fired and somehow became the minister of the universe, and he just kept telling himself there was no way this was actually happening. Gatsuan was just fixing his car, thinking he'd finally made it to the top, but the universe snatched everything away, leaving him to clean up his own mess and the screw-ups of those fake heroes. He nervously shoved his face against his invention, swearing he'd make it even better so this grill machine would finally work for real. Down by the river, a huge archway welcomes King Vazwamp, but guards are shouting that spirit weddings are cancelled, even though the hero's party is still raging since a knight explains. Goatson clicks his BBQ tongs while the guards whisper about how weird this meeting is. Then he stands up to thank the king, a gray-haired dude with a massive mustache and a loud beach. Gukin says dinner tonight is going to be epic, featuring all their best homegrown food cooked right on their own grill. King Vasvamp just grinned and said it was super interesting, since it was the final masterpiece from Minister Hotsvuna, the greatest magic engineer in the world. The host said he knew everyone always struggles with the grill fire, so he stepped up to show them how it's really done, grabbing the tongs and bragging that it's actually super easy. The king was totally shocked and jumped out of his seat, so the guy told him to test the tech himself by cranking the handle. and as soon as he did, the king realized it was actually an ignition system. The gear exploded right in the king's face. Everyone watching just froze in total shock. Fire swallowed the king whole and he started screaming. People were shouting for him in a total panic. The king's men started losing it and blamed Got's servant for trying to take out Magdede, but the whole thing was a total setup where the king turned a handle. The guy hit the floor, and the healer rushed in to save him. The guy threw his hands up, swearing they had it all wrong and this wasn't a hit job, especially since the machine worked perfectly back home. But as he wondered why it was, the fire and forest spirits were totally fuming, and with twisted looks on their faces, they said there was no way they'd ever forgive him. The vassal charged at Hatsavan, yelling that he was finally gonna pay for what he did, so Hatsavan hit the dirt and started screaming, until a voice suddenly called out to the men. The king wiped his face and said that even the smartest geniuses can mess up, just like Gosen. The crew stopped and shouted for the king until he noticed them. Then Gozo Ann started apologizing and telling him that none of this mess was his fault. Gotsun drops to his knees and swears he didn't build this thing, blaming some master from his universe who kidnapped the spirit princess. He even squeezes out a fake tear and blames the king was shocked and asked, "Wait, didn't you say you invented this grill and even carved your name on it?" And right then, the guy knew he was totally busted. The hero stood up and told him to stop acting pathetic and just own up to it, leaving Guts totally shocked to hear this coming from his old friend. Braben shot a death glare at Gotsvan, deciding this useless minister had to be taken out ASAP before he got everyone killed. The guy bit his nails in a panic, remembering how he and the hero celebrated beating the demon lord by eating BBQ and literally torching whole universes just for the fun of it. Gotson reveals that this was all Braben's idea, and he's dead serious about shocking everyone by setting them on fire with a BBQ grill. Gatson started screaming his head off, so an annoyed Braven walked right up to him and demanded to know what he meant. But Gatson just said he'd find out soon enough before. Gotsvin leans in and whispers his wild plan, saying that if the hero takes the fall, he'll take the heat too just to get close to the king and join Vom's inner circle. But the hero is honestly just standing there totally confused. Gatswan pointed out how young the king was dressed, saying he'd love the outfit as long as it looked fresh, but the king just stood there watching with a look of total disappointment. With the plan set, Bremen and Hatsun started their little show, where Bremen yelled that this kebab was the greatest invention ever, while Hatsun acted totally shocked and hyped it up even more. The hero walks right up to the king, slaps a hand on his shoulder like they're best friends, and says even a stylish guy like him knows the deal, while another guy copies him. Instead of being shocked, King Vazvamp just coldly called them out for being heartless monsters who hurt people without even saying sorry, adding that they basically burn things down just for fun. He kept talking, mocking how the legendary hero and the world's best magic engineer turned out to be such total jerks. The second the king finished, Braboon and Hotsvan were totally shook, and instead of making a real point, they just started shouting a bunch of weird, formal-sounding nonsense. The king headed out too, announcing they'd already nabbed the guy trying to hide in their country, and he wanted to spill the tea at the BBQ because this meeting was a huge deal. Vazvamp basically told them he's gonna act like this meeting never even happened, and since he's totally done with their drama, he's rethinking their whole alliance and cutting them off for good. The second the master was gone, Braban screamed the wizard mechanic's name so loud his face twisted with pure hate. He was absolutely fuming and called Hatsun a total failure, shouting that he should have just handled everything himself from the start instead of trusting anyone else. After catching his breath, the light-haired kid says the engineer would have been fired if the festival wasn't going on, but he trails off, totally lost in thought about what kind of punishment is coming. Braben just totally demoted Gotsvan, dropping him from the deputy minister of magical devices all the way down to a lowly assistant. He was totally floored by the news because he never saw that demotion coming. Once the party wrapped up, Hatsuan headed down the street looking totally bummed. Walking alone, he remembered his son's dream of becoming a minister just like him, but he felt totally crushed knowing he couldn't tell his family about his humiliating 2-rank dem. This guy didn't want any news leaking during the festival, so he decided to hide the truth and stay in power until the next big job shuffle. Thinking like this totally hyped him up to take back his spot, and he was finally ready to go all out. He walked into his office feeling totally hyped, but then he heard some quiet voices coming from behind the cracked door. He slowly peeked through the crack to see what was up, and caught two guys acting like total weirdos. They were holding a super serious ceremony for a Mr. Universe doll, treating it. They all started grinning and swearing they always believed in him, saying he was way better than some lame Gazwan. That guy spying outside totally lost it, stormed into the office and started screaming at everyone for dumping trash in the wrong place, yelling that a doll definitely didn't belong in a spot like that. They spun around at the noise and saw a familiar face, mockingly calling him Assistant Minister, just to see if he'd accepted his huge demotion yet. The Goths were shaking as they demanded to know how their secrets got out, but the answer was brutal. One of them had snitched to the nun who saw everything at that crazy banquet. One guy found out he got demoted for acting out, and since Mr. Universe is a minister now, that creepy doll ritual was actually just a warm-up for the massive meeting. The guy finally snapped and screamed that it didn't matter because he was still the boss anyway. Out of nowhere, a guy bursts in and decks Gochtvan, making him scream as the stranger calls him a total loser. This guy walks in and announces he's the new manager, immediately calling out the dude on the floor for being disrespectful and demanding he use his proper title. April keeps beating the former minister until he's on the floor screaming in pain, all while she talks trash about how pathetic he looks. He was totally grossed out and stormed back to his spot, swearing he'd get them back twice as hard, but they just laughed and sarcastically praised him like his threats were a... Apo knew his new underling was totally cooked, so he asked him if Mr. Universe would ever hire someone who mocked him as a minister. And the answer was pretty obvious. Let's go with, the new boss calmly told everyone they'd all agreed to wreck him, saying the entire universe would be hyped to see this jerk finally get what he deserves. He says they're finally even for all the trash they put his master through, and then he trolls them by saying it's their turn to act goth-suggingly. Gatsuan finally realized his life was a total mess, just like the entire universe. He completely lost it and let out a massive scream. He told Apila he was finally ready to do all. The manager completely lost it, screaming insults and kicking the guy out to show everyone that the former minister was now a total nobody. A long line of carriages rolled down the road, carrying robot horses that creaked and clicked in a steady rhythm. King Vazvamp sat in his carriage feeling totally disgusted that such trashy people were actually called heroes, and he sounded completely fed up with how bad they really were. The servant told the king they'd finally hit the border, and even though he was trying to stay respectful, he sounded super nervous as he asked him to check something out nearby. The ruler looked out the window and was totally shocked to see his soldiers spelling out a message saying the universe is to blame for everything, so he can finally come back home. Vazavamp's mood shifted in a flash, going from totally shocked to straight-up furious. He couldn't get over how those guys felt zero guilt for what they did, and just as he reached his breaking point, he spotted a sign for Lake Ricardo while driving down the road. The king was totally fuming and ordered the owner to wipe out every single word right then and there. The guy nervously blurted out that the whole mess was already wiped clean. Vasvamp looks around and spots a sign showing some young guy standing right next to Princess Typhona. He was totally shocked to see the kid drawn as the entire universe, and right then, the guy next to him asks if he actually knows him. The guy hyped the boy up as a legendary traveler with a secret story hidden right here, and the king was so shocked he immediately asked to hear it. This guy is a total beast in the kitchen, and even smashed a world record by catching a giant mackerel, which is exactly how he crushed Brabanda to take first place. Even after hearing the whole story, the king looked totally bummed and said the guy was still guilty of snatching Princess Typhon. The master asked the guy if he actually had any character, calling it a total joke, while the girl nearby chimed in that they were acting just like a cute couple. A bystander saw the princess totally going off on anyone who dissed Universe, taking every insult personally, while a girl in the crowd couldn't help but gush about how beautiful their bond was. The king took one more look at the painting of the boy and the princess. He remembered the young guy reeling in that massive mackerel, and it put a huge smile on his face. While all that's going down, these two are just cruising along in a carriage. She asks if the pond water is safe to drink, and he tells her he's heard it's usually totally fine. He also noticed that the water where spirits live is always super pure, and drinking it actually recharges your energy for the long trip. The princess suddenly snaps to life and guesses this is how the universe got its power during the wars, even wondering what it tastes like. But she's totally shocked when he tells her he got his strength without needing any water at all. Right then, Typhon got a wild idea. Since nobody had ever tasted that water and she'd been dying to try it herself, she figured it was worth a shot. All right, let's head to the water then, since he said he found something by the road where he stopped earlier. This is the literal source of all souls, and the girl is so hyped she tells them they need to rush over right now to taste that magic water. The Typhons are racing through deep space, riding their mechanical horse trans toward their big goal. She says she's dying for a drink from that fountain because her throat is totally bone dry. That spirit is hiding out in the woods, and finding it now is way harder than before, even though it took them forever to track it down during the fight with the Lord. Now all eyes are on this weird building in the distance that looks exactly like a giant statue. Nobody could even tell which statue it was supposed to be. He realizes this weird statue is the perfect landmark to find the spot, but something else catches his eye right away. He was totally hooked by this ancient temple, especially since the carvings called it the Cathedral of the Source. While our hero was still trying to wrap his head around how much this place had changed, Typhon suddenly called out to someone. The massive doors groaned open with a super loud, creepy screech. This exhausted nun walks out and acts super polite at first, calling the place a sanctuary for spring spirits, but the second she spots a traveler she doesn't want there, she totally loses her cool. The girl spotted Universe and started shaking with rage, screaming that he had some nerve showing his face in such a holy place while demanding to know what he was even doing there. While he was over there mumbling to himself, his buddy flashed a smile and told her they just wanted a quick drink from the fountain. So the lady thought it over and finally let them inside, telling them to make themselves at home. The nun finally chilled out a little but still warned Universe to respect the local spirits, so Typhon stepped in to protect him and swore he'd never act like that. The princess wanted to prove her point so bad she started talking to the Universe itself, and it was actually listening until a woman interrupted them to show the way to a fountain where everything was decked out for a massive party. She walked up to the swirling water, and even though she was told she could drink it, she had to be careful about what it might do to her body. Typhon was super upset and said this wasn't how she planned things at all, but the woman just sarcastically told her she could always just blame the Universe for everything. She said this dude was here with the heroes before and did something crazy. He pinned down a spirit to use as target practice, and you can even ask the hero himself if you don't. The lady in the black scarf said the spirits totally vanished after that, which is why the place is a ghost town now, even though the people tried everything, like building a massive cathedral, just to beg for forgiveness and bring them back. These spirits are super shy, but the nun stayed patient, hoping one would show up, and she even decked out the whole place just to give them a warm welcome. The girl is basically in tears and says it's all over since Mr. Universe appeared at the fountain, but the boy's friend thinks the whole thing is just a massive misunderstanding. Tears streaming down her face, she whipped around and shouted, asking Typhon what he meant by a misunderstanding. And right there, she saw something that totally blew her mind. Typhon whipped around and saw the kid getting swarmed by so many ghosts that he basically vanished from sight. She was so freaked out that she started yelling about the massive crowd of spirits in the spring. She noticed this spirit veil was basically invisible, and you could barely even see the outline of the person hiding behind it. She totally snapped and screamed how any of this was even possible, but then she suddenly felt sick and passed out cold, making the boy and girl rush over only to realize that things were actually looking really bad. They brought her back to the room, tucked her in with a blanket, and let her finally get some rest. She caught a crazy fever and started rambling in her sleep, crying about being all alone and how she knew her friends would never actually abandon her. Right when she woke up, Typhon handed her some water and promised it was totally normal, so she thanked him and took a few sips. She thought she just dreamed about him being surrounded by spring spirits, but she found out it wasn't a dream at all. She admitted that even if it was all just a dream, she was totally hyped that this guy could actually summon spirits. The nun realized she was being way too mean and decided to apologize for everything she said earlier. He sounded super unsure as he told them there was totally nothing to worry about. Since it was way too late to head back out, the lady told the crew they should just crash at her place for the night. It's the middle of the night and everyone is fast asleep, but Universe is wide awake and just sitting there on the bed. He quietly snuck out, being super careful not to wake anyone up. Turns out he was heading straight for a garden with water, and the whole place was decked out in sparkling decorations. The kid started stripping off the decorations, whispering like he was scared of getting in trouble, and after saying it looked nice, he went totally silent as he pulled off the next piece. These monsters found the light way too bright, and he knew it was totally going to hold them back. Turns out someone was actually spying on him the whole time, just barely peeking out from their hiding spot. The universe finally noticed her and whispered that she was probably just born, telling her not to be scared since everything else has stopped shining. He reached out to the little spirit, but she flinched back in fear until he promised he could help her escape. She squeezed her eyes shut and bit down on his finger, her whole body shaking with fear. She opened her eyes to see the bite mark, but she was totally shocked to find his hand still on her and a tiny smile on his face. Then the universe asked if she'd finally chilled out and told her not to worry, since it wasn't actually her enemy. Turns out this little guy is actually a healer, and it fixed the boy's wound just by licking it. She gave him a super guilty look, but he promised her he wasn't mad at the kid at all. With a huge smile and sparkling eyes, she straight up told him she wants to be friends. The universe basically held him in its hand as glowing spirits started swarming around him in the dark. He was totally stunned, but he kept it real and told them that while he was happy to see them, they didn't need to act like they did during the day, since it's way better to just talk to everyone one-on-one. He instantly regretted that move because a massive line was already stretching out right in front of him. He couldn't help but laugh out loud as the spirit's power completely swallowed him up again. Someone else was actually peeking through the window, checking out this hilarious sight. It was a nun, but she couldn't see a thing because the spring spirits had already headed back home. Still totally stunned, she whispered that they all actually missed the universe, even though they probably should have hated it. Typhon walked up and bragged that spirits totally love him because he treats them so well, but the girl just turned away to look at the boy's friend. She had to know if it was true, so she asked if she was the wind spirit, and the girl apologized for the late intro before finally revealing her name. The dark-haired girl felt a bit awkward and asked for her name again, mentioning it sounded like a princess, and Typhona shyly admitted that she actually was that princess. The nun was totally blown away, and she let out a scream so loud that people outside definitely heard it. Universe heard the scream and bolted over to see if they were okay, but he was totally shocked to find his friend just standing there looking confused and messing with her hair. The mistress dropped to her knees, begging for forgiveness because she had no clue she was talking to a real princess. In the spirit world, these guys have everything handed to them on a silver platter, which is why everyone treats them like total royalty. There's a clear ranking system here, and even though most people think they're at the top, Typhona says that's actually totally fine. This little girl was totally blown away when she saw the spirits of spring, and after asking if they loved the universe, she shouted that she loved it too and dove right into its arms. The girl on her knees just stared up at them, looking totally caught off guard. Totally confused, she decided to see for herself why the spirits were so obsessed with him, especially since spring spirits are usually super shy and stay far away from everyone. The universe turned its back, but Typhon answered, telling her his vibe is so sweet and cozy that she's flying right to him like a butterfly. The girl just stood there and lowered her head for another bow. She begged him to tell her exactly how to send those spirits back to where they belong. The universe asked her why she even needed it, and she just looked up at him with the saddest look on her face. She explains that the forest is being chopped down to build a massive cathedral, and eventually, the trees will be completely gone and replaced by a basic walking path. She starts yelling that if this happens, the spirits will have nowhere to go, so she's begging for backup because she definitely can't handle this mess by herself. He starts tripping over his words and says he totally gets it, making everyone crack a smile, especially the lady running the cathedral. The next day, Universe explains that the fountain creatures actually hate light unless it's bouncing off the water, so they have to rip down all the decorations. The nun felt terrible and admitted she had no clue, honestly thinking the sparks would be a hit, while Tiffin finished her work and offered to scrub the fountain next, only to be told that the spirits would handle that themselves. Turns out the water cleans itself naturally, but it takes a full 10 years, and she was just about to say something when she suddenly went quiet. It's all because the universe told the spirits that if they wanted to have some fun and clean the water, they just had to sit on its finger, and instantly a mushroom cap would grow with the V. He shouted with pure hype that the real fun was finally starting, pointing exactly where we needed to fly. The spirits started cheering and teamed up to clean the fountain, and it looked so magical that everyone watching felt like a happy kid again. The girl shrieked and stared into the water, seeing she was finally clean, but she felt super bummed out and called herself a total idiot for being so immature. She sadly told him how she grew up in that shelter and knew more about spirits than anyone. So Typhon walked over and gave her a gentle head pat to comfort her. She tried to cheer him up, telling him she's giving it her all to finally understand the spirits. The lady nodded along because she was totally on board. The girl kept her story going, but then she realized something weird. The host was actually treating those spirits like they were just regular people. Most people just see them as mindless animals, but Typhon smiled and said spirits are way happier when you treat them like equals. The nun finally got it and asked if she'd ever be as great as her teacher if she followed the rules, but when the girl asked who she meant, the nun revealed her teacher was actually the universe itself. The boy was just watching them talk from the side, and he could already tell something big was about to go down. The princess even admitted that the wind spirits liked this guy way more than they liked her. The dark-haired woman says their teacher is someone special, and the girl totally agrees, calling him absolutely amazing. Their eyes lit up like the whole world was glowing, and they were so hyped to tell everyone that he was their teacher. The kid slowly sliced into it with his knife, being super careful not to mess up. Typhon spotted him and headed over to see what he was up to, while spirits swirled all around him, watching every single move. She saw the guy carving away at some wood and got super hyped, asking if he could really do that. She asked if he was building a stage for the local spirits, and the universe told her yeah, just like when he visited this place before. Suddenly, a nun cuts in and claims the hero did everything for the spirit on his own, but the girl shuts her down and says that's not true at all. She asked him straight up if it was true, and the guy started getting super nervous. This lady dressed like a nun revealed that the guy was actually a total jerk who treated spirits like trash, but back then, she was in total denial and refused to believe any of it. She dropped to the ground and started apologizing for being clueless, which totally confused the universe as it nervously told her to look up. She wouldn't even look him in the eye, saying she didn't deserve it after how badly she messed up and treated him. Right in the middle of talking, she totally freaks out because she realizes both she and a nun from the nearby cathedral messed up big time, and while she's standing there clueless, they finally stepped inside the room on the cathedral's top floor. They ripped the cloth off the massive object, revealing a statue of someone for the whole crowd to see. Typhon's jaw dropped when she realized the statue was actually the legendary hero who saved the whole country. But when a boy asked if she was for real, she decided she had to uncover the truth behind why it was even there. She admits they're in a massive rivalry with the cathedral next door, so they're building hero statues to see who can lure in the most spring spirits. They had to show their work to King Vaswamp so he could pick a winner. But the girl was totally confused and asked how things even got this crazy. He got a really sad answer. Without the spring spirits, the whole temple would literally crumble to pieces, so they decided to just borrow a hero from each other to save it. She just realized the hero statue can't actually summon any spirits, leaving her totally stuck, but Typhon is just grinning and says the whole thing is actually super easy. She was super confident and claimed she could actually build a statue of the entire universe. The guy turned bright red because he never expected his own statue to be the key to solving everything. The lady said the prince would be there in a few days and promised to show him the hero's statue, but Typhon was like, if we're summoning spirits, then That finally got the nun on board, so the princess promised that if they all worked together, they'd totally finish everything on time, before asking the spirits if they were down for the plan. She heard a super happy squeak back, letting her know they were totally down. The girls were super hyped and decided to build a massive statue just for Mr. Universe. The universe straight up refused to build it because nobody makes a monument for themselves, and man, you could tell he was totally freaking out. Everyone's jaws hit the floor, and they started firing off a million questions because he clearly knew his stuff. He admitted it was true, but felt super weird about building a statue of himself, so the girl decided to go dig up the truth about Eden Village while he just told her she could do whatever she wanted. Typhon was basically in tears as he asked if it was wrong to feel this way, especially since the guy was a total legend that everyone looked up to. So things are about to get way more hype for everyone. He finally accepted the situation and started building a statue of himself. She thanks them for the help, but they just play it cool and say it was no big deal, leaving her so happy she's practically glowing. She said she was super hyped that they were finally teaming up. He remembered Typhon's words about them being together again and felt a huge weight lift off his shoulders, realizing that if she's happy, then everything is totally fine. Once the universe finally finished making this body, Everyone lost their minds because it was straight up perfect. 845. They were super confident and told everyone they'd handle the boss all by themselves. They kept changing it a million times to make it better, but it still ended up being a total mess. They were totally worn out and starting to lose it because literally nothing was going their way. A random kid showed up to visit, but Typhon immediately told him to back off and get lost. So as the boy walked away, he mouthed off that if Typhon's face was ground down just a little more, it would actually be pretty small. She was screaming on the inside because her creative beast just wouldn't wake up. She explained that the statue wasn't just some random idea, but the master finally uncovering the stone's true self. She took a long, heavy breath. It felt like the entire universe went quiet. A bit later, he calls her up and says they should totally use those tiny earth spirits for help. She was super hyped, and her mood instantly shot through the roof. She was blown away that they totally got it, so she suggested they build their own universe together. She threw on her glasses, whipped her coat back, and struck a pose to look totally epic. She kept her royal vibe while taking charge, telling them to bend the nose and chip the teeth to make the statue look way more real. She was almost finished and said it already looked spot on and totally awesome. Just then, a nun walks in and suggests a snack break, and everyone is totally hyped to take a breather and grab some food. The spring and earth spirits were totally vibing with the tea and sweets, and even Typhon was actually having a blast. The head nun walked up to the boy to talk about something super serious, but he just froze and mumbled some total gibberish. She was dying to talk to spirits just as easily as her teacher did. She used to think people just scared spirits away, so whenever she needed their help, she'd just trap them in a net like they were bugs. The young master doesn't even lift a finger, yet everyone still has his back, and now she's dying to know how to be just like him. He stayed totally quiet, just letting it all sink in while he thought it over. But then he spoke up and said they actually had to use them. He says spirits are actually hyped to help out, but they won't just trust anyone, especially if you're only using them as tools to get what you want. He kept the story going, explaining that these guys aren't just servants who grant wishes, but real teammates you work with to build the future together. He just wants every spirit around him to keep smiling, because their happiness is the only thing he cares about. As he finished his speech, he saw everyone was totally touched, and even Typhon was basically in tears, asking why he was so kind since he's now the one friend and ally they absolutely can't lose. The whole universe was so confused it basically begged them to stop talking like that. He super politely asked them to cut it out, but the girls just laughed in his face, leaving him pouting like a total baby. Over in the next city, everyone's staring up at this giant statue of a hero named Breben. This cathedral called the Founder is basically a safe haven for souls, but right now, a super frustrated scream is echoing through the whole place. The head nun is freaking out because the spring spirits still haven't returned, even after they built that massive statue of the hero. She's a total nervous wreck, constantly mumbling that she has to win or she'll never become a real nun. Suddenly, there's a noise behind the door and someone calls out to the woman. She took a second to get her head together and coolly told him to just walk in. The girls swung by with this week's donations and asked him to take them. She thanked them and sent them on their way, promising the spirits would bless them. Then she suddenly dumped out her bag of coins and pinched one between her fingers. Right then, everything finally clicked for her. She thought the statue looked totally dull, but she was sure that if it was super shiny, spirits would swarm it like moths to a light. Now she's planning to wreck the spirit shelter nearby just to kick out that annoying holy mother who's always getting in her way. She's about to own that whole place, scoring all the cash and power she ever wanted, and her wildest dreams are finally coming true. The nun's eyes locked onto the treasure chest covered in shiny jewels. She looked totally crushed as she explained that her sponsors stopped paying, and now she's got basically nothing left to give the monks. Why would she gamble her own life and the safety of these saints who finally found some peace? There's a letter on the table saying if they don't pay back the debt by the deadline, the head nun and 5 saints are getting sold into slavery. This guy in a hat hyped her up for the great buy and handed over a massive chest, stoked to get the deal done. She saw the one packed with coins and totally lost it with excitement. She knew she was about to be a total legend in the district, and everyone was going to lose their minds over that shiny hero statue. The nun was tossing coins around in pure joy, knowing King Vasvamp would be at the hero statue reveal tomorrow and feeling absolutely certain that she was about to win big. Today's the big day to see who wins. They're finally picking which cathedral is the real deal, and the statue face-off is about to begin. So right then and there, I give my word to King Vasvampu. The king starts checking them out, and while the biggest statue is right by the cathedral of the source, only its face actually looks good. Everything depends on how hard she summons the spring spirits, but the head nun says they've already got it all under control. As soon as that cloth drops, everyone's gonna see the real hero's face, and those spirits are definitely gonna rush in to knock that statue down. Just then, a young nun jumped into the conversation, apologized for cutting in, and told them they all worked super hard to build that statue together. Her rival just laughed in her face, refusing to believe she had help with the statue since she was always a loner, and that really hurt her feelings. To stop the girls from fighting, the king told them to wait for his signal and then rip the covers off the statues at the exact same time. The girls geared up and got ready for action. They gave the signal, and suddenly, every single cover was ripped off the sculptures at the exact same time. You could already start to see the shapes of those giant statues. The king took one look at them and was totally blown away. One of the statues at the party was totally drenched in perfume, and even the nun who built the giant thing was so shocked she couldn't stop herself from screaming. Vasvamp didn't even know why, but he suddenly realized this sculpture was actually dedicated to the entire universe. She was totally shocked and asked him if he actually knew the teacher. He nervously stammered that he didn't know the guy, but every single person the ruler asked was totally hyping him up. She couldn't even hide her smile as she told the king he was totally right about her teacher being an awesome person. Plus, no spirit is even half as famous as the teacher, and tons of creatures flock to his statue just to get a glimpse of him. The king nodded along, but then he realized every single spirit was wearing the exact same smile as Princess Typhon. Right then, the evil nun started talking trash, claiming the whole thing was a total lie, and that spirits couldn't even touch that fake hero's statue. He kept calling her a liar, but she fired back, claiming she was the one who tamed and summoned all those spirits. Otherwise, where would they have even come from? She said it was a total trash move that would make the spirits hate her so much they'd never show up again. Suddenly, the wind picked up and everyone just froze, getting a seriously bad vibe. The powerful nun went dead silent and started listening super closely. Suddenly, a crazy idea popped into her head and she let out a wicked smirk. She kicked off her speech by telling everyone to look at the forest, claiming it was crying because spring was totally furious. Suddenly, a massive swarm of spirits burst out, and there were so many that every single person at the big statue reveal saw them. The nun started cheering like crazy because all those spirits were flying straight into her hero statue, and she yelled that it was all hers now. As the show wrapped up, she shouted at the spirits to get ready for action. She gave the order to smash the statue of that fake hero universe, then pointed her finger and sent a massive swarm of spirits crashing into the enemy building. But they did the total opposite of what she wanted, chucking the Brabant statue with all their strength until it hit the ground with a massive crash. Totally losing it, she grabbed her head and screamed at the top of her lungs that they took down the wrong statue. She kept screaming at the top of her lungs, begging them over and over to just stop. She's screaming her head off for help, but the statue just keeps smashing into pieces. She realized her whole future was literally falling apart right in front of her face. The stones slammed into the ground and a building, shattering into a million tiny pieces. The whole building started crashing down, and that massive noise sent everyone nearby panicking out into the streets. She just stood there frozen, watching the whole place get absolutely wrecked. It was finally over, and every single building just crumbled into a massive pile of dust. Right then, a group of nuns dropped to their knees before the Holy Mother, begging for forgiveness for their huge mistake and asking to finally come back to her shelter for souls. She flashed a smile and told them they're always welcome back, suggesting they finally start living in peace with the spring spirits and follow the Master of the Universe's way. Everyone was totally down for it, but then another Holy Mother stepped in to stop them. She swayed back and forth, looking totally dangerous, and screamed that there was no way they were taking her nuns. She got even more aggressive, threatening to sell her off as a slave and leave her totally alone. Out of nowhere, some guy pops up and tells us we have to move right this second. 3 guys showed up with ropes and chains, led by a dark-haired dude who immediately started demanding to know where the saint was hiding with his money. Then that lady who was just screaming started lying, pretending these other girls were the ones they wanted, and ordering them to go clean the Holy Mother, too. The guy starts bragging about all the beautiful women at his house, hoping they'll all get along so he can make some serious cash. He told the girls to relax because they'd actually like it here. But when someone shouted there was no rush, the leader spun around wishing that guy would just shut his mouth. It was King Vazvamp, and he shut them down instantly, saying there was no way they were taking those people. The guys were totally floored to see the king himself, especially since he was actually stepping up to protect the girls. They nervously asked what he was doing there, but he stayed silent and demanded to know why they were there and why they needed those people. The man starts kissing up to the king, calling him Your Majesty, and showing off a paper that says the Holy Councils left it as a total guarantee. The king scanned the contract and saw that every single word was written down exactly as promised. These saints are just from a small home shrine instead of the big cathedral, so they don't actually count as a real guarantee for this deal. The guy starts panicking, wondering where the real Holy One is if it's not her, so he quickly looks over at the second Holy Mother. He shouted that it was her, looking totally stunned because he definitely didn't expect to see an older person there. He totally gave up and accepted his fate, while the other two guys started dragging the girl away, leaving her completely stunned and trying to fight back. They shoved her into a cage on wheels while this guy talked down to her, calling her an old lady and making it clear she'd be working off her debt until she was totally miserable. Everyone just stood there staring as the carriage rolled away, taking her right along with it. The king finally turns to the Holy Maiden and tells her that even though he hasn't made it official yet, everyone knows she's totally winning this thing, and she's so hyped she thanks him right away. The whole gang teamed up with Vazvamp and headed straight for the Shelter of Spirits. He was super hyped, saying the place looked awesome and totally chill. He even mentioned he'd love to hang out there for a few days. Meanwhile, Typhon and Universe were staring intensely at the... He told her he had a secret message to deliver. Then, after a quick pause, he leaned in and whispered that they were being watched and had to find a way to bail. She started cracking up at his words, and even though Universe tried to get her to chill, she called for the Holy Mother who was already waiting right behind the door. The girl tells the nun they're heading out, claiming they're on a honeymoon and want to keep it going, which totally catches the guy off guard. The woman laughed and said she totally saw it coming, since she already knew they weren't just friends, and the princess just smiled and told her she was right. The dark-haired girl finally opens up, saying she wants to vibe with the spring spirits and be just as kind as they are, but what she really wants is a bond built on total trust. She blushed a bit, but then she just grinned and said she was 100% sure they'd nail it on the second try. She asked the universe what it thought, but it didn't say a word and just gave her a mysterious smile. He saw the spirits were already linked to the Holy Mother, and the princess caught on too, finally getting the whole picture. Those creatures gently hugged the girl as she stood there, totally confused about why her teacher wasn't answering her question. The nun looked totally heartbroken as she waved goodbye to the guests hopping into their carriage to head back out. Two young girls walked up to her with big grins, then the spirits flapped their wings and zoomed off into the sky. The whole universe was watching them now, and it actually gave them a tiny smirk. He was so hyped for her because she finally found a real squad instead of just random people, and she was absolutely loving it. After traveling for a bit, they finally stopped, and the boy told them they were super close to the capital and needed to put on the con next. He points out that the plan takes them straight through the capital, but since their wanted posters are probably everywhere, they'll have to be super careful in the crowds. So the girl suggests they just like magic, the princess suddenly appeared in a hat, glasses, and a mask, complaining that her ears were all plugged up while the guy told her she looked totally weird. She realized she needed a total makeover, so she showed up in a super colorful dancer outfit and asked her friend if she looked the part. She told them that the music was actually blasting from the town nearby. Don't forget, there's a massive, noisy festival for the heroes popping off right now. He finally made his choice and told Typhon they were heading this way, and she was so hyped that she said it was time to start their big adventure. The guy told her to slow down, but she was totally confused and demanded to know why they weren't in a hurry. He warned her that dancing would totally blow their cover, then asked why she even changed her clothes in the first place. She pouted and muttered that he seriously needed to change his clothes too. She said it'd look totally weird for a girl to dance with a guy in a boring work shirt, plus their faces are already on posters everywhere, so everyone knows they're a couple anyway. The princess didn't even care about getting caught because she was way more focused on checking out her crush in his new outfit with a total smirk. She was super hyped to pick out his new look and told him to go change, and Universe didn't even argue. He just went with it. Typhon was feeling super good about herself, so she jokingly asked where all the cool guys hang out, basically pointing right at herself. She gave Mr. Universe a total makeover, turning him into one super stylish trumpet player. The guy felt totally awkward and complained he looked way too flashy, but she insisted it was super trendy before revealing her weird plan to have him play the trumpet while she dances. She tried to tell him nobody would suspect a thing, but he just cut her off by shouting her name. He straight up told her she better not even think about dancing. They landed right in the capital of Vasvampu, just as the Hero Festival's dance competition was reaching its absolute peak. She was so hyped to reach the city that she literally started screaming about how much she loved it there. Typhon was having a blast and told his friend it was time to start dancing. Even the universe could tell she wasn't listening to a single word he said. Everyone spotted the girl busting a move on top of the carriage and started hyping up how cool her dancing was. Everyone's screaming that she's the absolute best while the guy drives the carriage, but then he spots a wanted poster and it totally freaks him out. This mysterious guy checked out the crying man and the passing cart, but then he stared right at Universe, making him feel super uneasy. He was terrified that if they got caught, everything would go totally south. But things actually went great because the guy backed her up, called her gorgeous, and told her to keep that same energy and never stop. He breathed a huge sigh of relief after almost getting caught, but then the princess peeked in and tried to talk him into dancing, even though he told her he had 0 moves. He tells her to just look around, pointing out that their faces are plastered on wanted posters at every single corner. She's totally stunned and asks if it's actually him, because he looks like a whole different person on the sign. So when Universe asks if that's for real, she says, Typhon isn't letting this slide, so she gets ready to jump out and rip those posters down, but a young guy stops her right there. He warns her that messing with those wanted posters is a total crime, so even though he lets her dance, he makes it clear she better not touch them. She totally agrees, but she warns him that hitting those dangerous streets is way too risky, and they should just stay in the shadows to keep a low profile. She leaps back onto the roof and gets ready to start her dance. He watches the princess rush over with a smirk and whispers that if she says so, then that's exactly how it's gonna be. The party in the square is popping off, and they're finally kicking off the big ceremony to honor the heroes. The host announced that the top dancers were ready and told anyone else who wanted to show off to get up on stage. He kept explaining the rules and mentioned the winners get a massive prize, while the universe realized these city people are straight up obsessed with dancing. The very first challenger finally steps up to the stage. The host told the girl she was super cute and promised her that everyone agreed, even joking she'd already won the award for best looks just to make her feel better. But right then, she started her show by telling everyone she's not just super cute, but she's also an amazing dancer who's 100% sure she's going to win. The announcer was totally stunned and told her she's got serious guts to call herself a winner, making the whole crowd go absolutely nuts. He tells her he wants to see her dance and needs to call in his musicians, but she's totally confused and asks who he's even talking about. He fires back like he's reading a script, saying you can't just dance without music because every pro needs their own beat to move to. These musicians are dropping insane beats with high-tech gear, and honestly, every kid is totally obsessed with it right now. Typhon stormed off the stage in a total huff, and when her friend called out to her, she just sadly said his name back. She hits him up for advice because she needs a music assistant to enter the dance competition and has to figure out a plan. The girl told Universe Kunu she'd always dreamed of dancing with real people, and thought marrying the hero would finally make it happen. But he wouldn't let her. Tearing up, she told him she was dying to finally dance for the crowd today, and begged him to find a way to make it work. The guy finally figured out that wind spirits are totally obsessed with dancing. Tifona really wanted to join in, but she was stuck being a princess and wasn't allowed to, even though 1015. He told her straight up that it didn't matter if he could play those electronic instruments, because he promised he'd do whatever it took to get her on that. Her words really hit him in the feels, and she wasted no time sprinting off to tell them she was totally in. She came back saying they were told to wait, and while the guy just nodded and started thinking, Tifona was getting super annoyed. He apologized for worrying her, but she told him it was no big deal, so the universe promised to never stop fighting for the spirits just to cheer her up. She stopped for a second, But then she flashed a smile and told him his words were way different from that hero's promises, proving she totally trusts him. A real hero never stops until the whole world knows his name, so he wanted Typhon to give up everything just to help him get there. Plus, between that hero who tries way too hard and you, the spirits are picking you to be their master exactly because you're the total opposite of him. She said her boyfriend once asked her to dance, but when she tried to sit down, he couldn't warn her in time. She sat right on something sharp, jumped back up, and screamed in total pain. The two of them went to check it out and found a mysterious gramophone sitting right there. The universe scanned the gear and gave it a total pass because it's built so solid and is officially ready for action. He reads a message saying this thing was made for a duel, and just like that, a voice starts coming right out of the device. Turns out they were actually tree spirits, and they straight up asked the couple if they knew who Doodle was. The kid explains he knows the rhythm because he's a carpenter who works with sound, and the spirits are totally shocked since they remember everyone dancing to this before kids started obsessed with metal boxes. The kid asks them to play their music for the guys one more time, and they're totally hyped to do it for him. They asked if he was just a newbie since those young punks didn't even let him show off his skills. But the guy swore it wasn't like that at all. He just really wanted to see her get back on that stage. The Typhoons were super into how these spirits looked and kept saying they were totally adorable. She even said she's super hyped to finally dance to their music. She invited them to dance and promised it'd be a total blast, so they stopped to think about it for a second. They finally said yes, remembering how she'd been super nice when she offered to tag along. Just as the universe finished wiping the gramophone, a boy burst into the room and told Typhon it was time to get on stage. The host announced the show was almost over, and the crowd went absolutely nuts as the final team of wind dancers stepped onto the stage. The boy and girl lugged a gramophone onto the stage, carefully counting their steps, while the crowd gave the weird wooden box side eyes until one guest realized it was just like the one his dad used. The whole crowd started freaking out because they could tell that gear was a total relic, and while some people whispered that a girl like her should be on a synth instead, someone suddenly rushed up. She shut the conversation down, telling them not to talk like that and to just listen, because this show is going to be insane, especially since the legendary DJ Universe is about to perform. The crowd started getting rowdy, shouting that they'd never heard of this before, and the guy by the gramophone was really starting to freak out. The spirits told him to stop stressing and just relax, since they were going to handle everything and have a total blast while doing it. He flashed a grin, and Typhon smiled right back, thanking him for real since she'd been waiting for this moment forever. But it was way too early to celebrate because the universe was just getting started and began counting them down one by one.